Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 110 of the Former Action Guys podcast. I'm your host, Justin Kramer. And this week I have on my friend, Staff Sergeant Dustin Reel. He was a Marine Corps JTAC. He was an instructor at Fort Sill at the MASOC course, which is the Marine Artillery Scout Observers course. He did a deployment to Afghanistan as a Georgian Liaison Team. Well, he went... So the way that works is ANGLICO would go with the Georgian Liaison Team, which is a country of Georgia that broke off from, the USSR back in the day. They would go and provide the fire support specialist for these Georgian liaison teams. And so he did a deployment to Afghanistan as a JTAC for that. And we get into that. Overall, really good conversation. What's really interesting about this conversation is he had the same problem a lot of people had. They wanted to get into the Marine Corps. They wanted to do a deployment, but it was like one thing after another. Stopped them from deploying. Orders to a unit that is already deployed. Get to another unit and he gets taken off a deployment, things like that. And it's, so we talk about those frustrations and those things like that. A really good conversation. What's interesting about Dustin is that I actually took over for him. He was my instructor at MOS school when I was a lat mover. So I went through Fort Sill as a sergeant and he was one of my instructors. And then in 2014, when I got orders to 1st ANGLICO, I actually came in and took over his SSgt, his Supporting Arms Liaison Team. And that's when he got out of the Marine Corps. So it was cool kind of meeting him again at that time. And then we kind of kept in touch a little bit. We talked to him in Hawaii when we were on one of our deployments and stuff. But solid dude with a lot of experience. He's done a lot of interesting things. And he got kicked around a lot trying to get a deployment. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I hope everybody enjoys it. Let me say real quick, too, that I apologize. There hasn't been an episode in a couple of weeks. I am in the last 2 weeks of school at San Diego State University. I'm getting ready to graduate with a degree in journalism and advertising. And there's been a lot going on. So I just haven't had time to do all the things that I need to do between, the podcast and the website and then school, and then just regular stuff like being a parent and, just living a regular life. So I just kind of pulled back a little bit, took a couple weeks off. So I think people can appreciate that. I want to say thank you to the people that reached out and said they've been enjoying the podcast. I've gotten a lot of emails, people that have known someone that's been on the podcast or guys that are thinking about joining the military that have, jumped on and started listening to the podcast to kind of get an idea of what different jobs do. And, all the people on YouTube that have started commenting and stuff like that, really appreciate that. That drives up the, those engagements drive up the algorithms and all that shit and helps me actually get seen by more people. So if you're on YouTube, please do subscribe and leave comments, ask questions. If people ask questions under podcasts and stuff, that's specific to something that somebody talked about. I try to go back to that person I interviewed and have them come on and answer specifically. Or if they're not on YouTube, at least give me an answer so I can come back and give, some kind of accurate information to those that are looking for more information in the comments. So please leave a comment. I do read them all. If it's regular, conversation, I'll engage. If you're being a douchebag, I won't. So yeah, as always, make sure to hit up my website. It's jkramergraphics.com. Like I said, I finish up school in 2 weeks, and this is going to become my full-time gig. I'm going to be a e-commerce podcaster dude, whatever. So, you want to help support me and help support this growing kind of thing I'm doing here. Go to jkramergraphics.com and pick up some stickers, a t-shirt or something like that to support the show. And then, as always, hit up my social media accounts on Instagram at Former Action Guys. You can find me there. You can find me at JKramerGraphics on Instagram as well. And I'm on Twitter, #4, MER Action Guys. If you want to, Twitter, I'm probably on more. I probably talk more on Twitter than anything, but it's all political stuff. I'm getting into the comments about news articles that are covering things that are out of context and shit like that. And it's really kind of, honestly, the bad reporting and stuff and being in school and seeing, honestly, some bad teaching in journalism school as well has kind of made me want to start another podcast that does just news stuff. So keep an eye out for that. That's probably coming down the pipeline. Maybe, I don't think it'll be an everyday thing. I think it'll be more than 1 day a week, maybe 2 or 3 days a week. Just because there's a lot of out of context information and garbage information being put out by legacy media that have these agendas and stuff like that. And that's on the left and right. And, so somebody's got to do something, right? So somebody's got to be putting out accurate information, and I feel like I can do that. So keep an eye out for that. I'm really considering a move back to Indiana from California just because it's kind of garbage living out here. It's like $4 a gallon plus for gas. I took a picture in downtown San Diego and sent it to my buddy. $4.60 for a regular gallon of unleaded, for a regular unleaded. Crazy. So I may be moving back to Indiana and setting up a permanent studio and stuff, which would be great. So yeah, man. But all this is possible because people are supporting the show. People have left comments. I have over 100, 108 5-star reviews on Apple Podcast. Please keep doing that. If you're on Apple Podcast, please leave a review, even if it's not a written review. Written reviews are better, but any review I'll take. If you're on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment, subscribe, turn on notifications so you're receiving notifications when I do release videos and stuff like that. For those that have been following me on YouTube for a little while, they know that I was doing a lot of YouTube live. I was trying to do a lot of live streams with guys because I think it's better. You can engage with the audience and things. I don't know if it's the update I got on my MacBook or what, but my MacBook seems to be processing slower, causing the YouTube videos to become choppy, which then in turn makes me have choppy audio when I release the audio version. So until I figure that out, and maybe I need to upgrade my computer. I mean, it's 2016 MacBook Pro. I feel like it should be okay, but maybe not. But maybe once I figure out what the hell is going on there, I'm going to start live streaming again. So make sure to subscribe so you're notified when I do that. And that's it, man. Enjoy the podcast. It was a really good conversation, and I'm looking forward to our next episode that I think we'll probably have Dustin back on in another week or two. So yeah, enjoy. Dustin Real, welcome to the podcast. I almost messed your name up there. Dustin, Justin, it gets me fucked up sometimes.
We'll get confused.
Yeah, it is what it is. What's interesting about you is I just recorded the introduction before we started, and okay. I mentioned in that you were my instructor at MOS school, and then later on I come over and take over for you at First ANGLICO, which was kind of a small world kind of incident there. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but I want to start from the beginning of your career and stuff. And I want to begin with, you sent me your photos that you attached to the form to apply for the podcast. And one of them is of you with the BCGs on right out of boot camp looking super nerd. Are you upset that they got rid of the BCGs? I feel like that's a crime, against the military.
I think that's a tradition that we need to keep alive. We shouldn't be making it easier on these new kids with these stylish glasses. I'm pretty sure that everybody should have to go through that. I think it's a rite of passage.
Everybody's running with the hipster glasses and stuff now. It's not like it was back in the day when you had like the Drew Carey style fucking glasses.
Exactly. Yeah. I thought those pictures were pretty funny. Me with I don't remember which one I say. I got one with my wife. I got one with like my brothers and my mom. Mm-hmm. The BCGs are pretty sweet. And I think shortly after that, I got some, I got the fancy ones once I got to ANGLICO, I think.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. That, also, I didn't realize it looks like you're from a military family. Is that what drove you to go into the Marine Corps? Like, what made you decide to join the Marine Corps specifically?
So it's a little bit around. So both my brothers are in. Mm-hmm. So they're both in the Navy. My older brother's out now. My little brother is still in. He's actually on a deployment right now. He's now I think a senior chief. He's a chief or a senior chief. Oh, cool. But I joined in 2004. I was 24. And so I joined at an older age. I was working construction. I was going to school. Mm-hmm. I'd gotten my associate's degree in 2002. And got kind of jaded with school a little bit. I just wanted to work. So I was working as an electrician. Of course, 9/11 happened at that, ended 2001. And my memory of war was sort of like the Gulf War. I remember that happened when I was 11 years old.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is going to be like a 3-month thing, right? Like we're going to go to war for 2 weeks. We're going to beat up the Taliban and then, mission accomplished. So my older brother was in at the time. My little brother joined shortly afterwards, and I was working construction. I had a really good job. And I was thinking, well, this thing will be, if I joined, this thing would be over like immediately, and I would just have a 4-year contract right as the war ends. Yeah. So I didn't join for a while. I was like, well, both my brothers are in, my family's contributing, and a couple years went by and I knew people in the military, and I kept seeing these stories of guys going off to deployment to Iraq, just regular Marines and soldiers and stuff. And, give like little vignettes of their lives. Like, they got a couple of kids, they got a wife, they've deployed 2 times or 3 times maybe. And I was like, man, this thing is not ending. Like, this is not going to be over soon. It looks like it's, by that time, Afghanistan or Iraq kicked off. So, we had all the Afghan stories, and then Iraq kicked off, and I was like, wow, this is expanding. It's not getting smaller.
Yeah.
So I was 24, and I was like, look, if I don't do it now, I'm never doing it. So I went to my boss and said, hey, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And I'd visited a couple recruiters. I'd talked to Army. I talked to Navy. I was thinking about going Navy EOD. I knew some people who were Navy EOD. I thought that was a pretty cool job. But both my brothers were Navy, so I was like, I'm going to do something a little different. And yeah, I initially tried to go Army. I wanted to be a Ranger. And, at that time, I didn't know much about the difference between the services, Army and Marine Corps. I really didn't have like a great concept of the difference of them. And that Army guy he didn't really get back to me. And I think I walked across the hall. It was right there in San Diego. It's right in Claremont Mesa. They got a recruiting station there in Claremont Mesa. And I walked across the hall to the Marine Corps recruiter, and he snatched me up and got that paperwork done fast. So he wasn't messing around.
It's funny. I've had multiple people say that they went to the recruiter's office just out of general interest, and the Army guy wasn't there, or the Navy guy wasn't there, and the Marine guy's like, "Hey, what's up, dude? Come on in," and gets a contract going right then.
Yeah. So he's like, "Yeah, what do you want to do? Sort of, what are you interested in?" And I was like, "Well, if I'm going to join the military, like, I want to be in the fight. So I want." I want to go to combat. Like, I don't want to be stuck in the rear, which is funny because it happened to me a lot, actually, in the Marine Corps. But that's my approach. And he's like, okay, well, we'll send you. We'll give you this 0800 artillery, MOS. And I'm like, artillery, all right, that sounds cool. Artillery blows stuff up. I kind of know what that is. So that's what he signed me up for. And it was actually I looked at my contract later because at the time I didn't have any idea what all these codes meant.
Yeah.
It was a fire direction control specialist.
Ugh.
I was about an eighth of an inch away from being an FDC Marine.
Ugh.
And
no offense to FDC Marines, but
yeah. Hey, look, I know FDC Marines, they're good dudes, but
for sure. Yeah.
I did not want to be stuck in a tent with a ruler for
chain smoking cigarettes, sitting there with your battle axe, or the pizza cutter.
Yeah, just getting yelled at by some lieutenant. No thanks. Like, that does not sound awesome. So I found out at boot camp, I guess at the end of boot camp, that my MOS was going to be 0861. I was going to MASOC at Fort Sill.
Nice. Did you even? But when they said that, do you even know what that is? They're like, fire support man. Like, what? I'm a firefighter.
Not really. Yeah. I forget at what point. At some point before I got to Fort Sill, I knew it was some sort of forward observer thing, and I don't remember exactly when I was told, but I was like, okay, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like scout observer course, like that sounds cool. Like, it's got the word scout in it. So
sounds legit to me.
Sounds kind of cool, right?
Did you have any experiences at Fort Sill as a student that kind of shaped the way you instructed? Because you were an instructor there also, so.
Yeah. Maybe. When I got to Fort Sill as an instructor, I think it helped. I think it helped me realize how to try to be a good instructor. Mm-hmm. So when I went to school, there was one instructor. We had a sergeant there, and he had a master guns over him, but we never saw him. And when I went there as an instructor, we had 5 Marines.
Yeah, there was quite a few.
We had a master sergeant, a gunnery sergeant, 2 gunnery sergeants, 2 staff sergeants, 3 MASOC instructors. We had 3 sergeants. I picked up staff sergeant there. So we had a way better staff there. We were also doing the Chiefs course, And then the piss off instructor course, we can talk about that later. But so we had a couple extra things we were doing other than just MASOC. But um, and we were in different buildings. We were in a totally different part of the base. So when I went, we were on the east side of the base, and then when I got there as an instructor, we had totally different facilities. And we were
I think they're in completely new facilities again.
yeah,
Yeah.
they changed like 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you get done with school, or while you're in school, did anybody in the school like know about any of the units? Were you vying to go to one unit over another? Obviously, when I went through and you were an instructor, everyone there kind of knew about Anglico, and you hear all the guys hoping they go to Anglico and stuff like that. Was that the same kind of vibe then, or was that kind of before Anglico came back into the rotation? Really?
We had heard about Anglico, but my goal was just to go to the West Coast. I didn't care.
Yeah.
So I'm from, well, not from San Diego, but I mean that's where I lived there for 10 years before I joined or 13 years before I joined the Marine Corps.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And I got married right after boot camp. I mean, immediately.
Me too.
So
boot leave,
I
baby.
graduated April 22nd, got married April 29th. We had the whole thing lined up. My wife did all the work. So I just showed up. I didn't have to do anything. But we had been dating for 6 years. So, I mean, we'd been dating since the time we were 18. So I was like, well, I could get stationed anywhere. And I think my proposal was something like, hey, you want to get married? So it wasn't super formal, but she did an awesome job. We got married on North Island, right there on the beach. It was beautiful. It was awesome. So,
what uniform were you wearing? Did you wear your uniform from boot camp?
No, I wore my blues. I got my dress blues.
Oh, nice.
I got my single ribbon and my dress blues and my shaved head. And yeah.
I was a nerd in my alphas. We didn't get blues in boot camp. Yeah.
Nice.
It was cool.
No, it was fun though, so it was on North Island, and we went out and hung out and out there in Coronado afterwards, and went to McPee's and stuff like that, and it was pretty fun.
Nice.
But anyway, so I wanted West Coast, and you don't find out your unit until Naval Gunfire School.
Mm-hmm.
So I got kind of shafted. I felt like what happened was I was slated to go West Coast. I don't even remember what unit. I think it was just like 11th Marines, and one other student in our class like knocked up some girl, and just they weren't even like in a relationship. He was just like, oh yeah, I knocked this girl up. We're gonna have a kid, and he had orders for a 2-year tour in Okinawa. And they just pull me in one day, and they're like, "Hey, we're switching you. He's having a kid, so he's taking your orders, and you're going to Okinawa." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm from San Diego. I've got a wife." They're like, "Oh yeah, it's unaccompanied too. Like, so you can't take your wife." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're gonna give me a 2-year unaccompanied tour to Okinawa?" I had orders to 11th Marines, and they're like, "Yep, sorry, suck it up." And but they got it changed to 1 year, which is like unheard of at the time.
At least.
Like, everyone I checked in with, the S1 and stuff, they're like, 1 year? Like, how did you do that? Like, nobody gets a 1-year tour in Okinawa.
Yeah.
But it was with 5th Anglico, so I was like, okay, well, there's a little icing on that crap cake. There's I'm gonna at least go to Okinawa, or go to 5th Anglico when I get there.
What year did you get to 5th Anglico? And it was probably still pretty new, right?
05. Yeah, I was in the that's where I met Nate. Nate Gerrans was there.
Okay.
And we did the stand-up ceremony. We established the unit. Supposedly we're plank holders, but I never got anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure all the staff and O got something. I'm sure they all got plaques on their walls somewhere.
Probably, right? That's the way it works.
Yeah, but they didn't hand that down to the PFCs. So
you haven't earned it yet. Rank has privilege, right?
Yeah. Well, I stood in the ceremony with my rifle for an hour and a half while somebody with some shiny stuff on their collar talked for a while. So, yeah, I don't know.
What's it like? You come to a brand new unit like that, it's got to be kind of I mean, I guess if you don't know anything, you're a brand new guy, you don't really know anything. But it was probably a lot of weird shit happening because they're trying to figure out how to even, their SOPs and stuff like that, how to even operate.
Yeah, it was weird because they established a single brigade before I got there. They manned up one brigade and they were deploying. They were going to Iraq. That was the '06 Ramadi deployment.
Hmm.
Um, so that was like middle of '06. I think they left. Um, I've heard Jocko talk about it. Jocko Willick, he worked with those guys on that deployment. But so we showed up and nobody was there. There was like one sergeant, there was a major and like a gunny who were sort of filling out like the headquarters.
Hmm.
But the CO was a major, and First Brigade was all doing workups. So they were in and out for like a couple of months. They'd show up for a couple of weeks and they were back out for another workup. They were off doing TACP shoots and stuff. So it was like a ghost town at ANGLICO at the time until First Brigade came back from one of their workups, and then there was just people everywhere, and then they were gone again. So it was like a Lance Corporal, PFC, whatever it was. It was sort of weird. It was like because that sergeant who was supposed to be in charge of us he was barely in charge of making his own bed. Uh, he was not awesome. He
They don't
basically
leave their
was,
best NCO behind.
no, he was basically just chain smoking in the back and would joke around with us. And I'm like, aren't we supposed to be doing something? Like, I feel like we're at this high speed Anglico. Like maybe we should be doing something. Um, and so that lasted for a little while. But they were bringing in people like crazy. So they would they wanted to fill the unit. So a lot of people started showing up. They started filling out the headquarters. They started filling out a second brigade, and so we actually started doing some things. We did some call for fire and some backyard just on the island. Little field ops, and we did a cool one. We went to South Korea and did a mountain warfare school, which was pretty fun.
Oh, that's cool. I always
Um,
wanted to go. I mean, a lot of people say Korea sucks, but I always wanted to check that out. I never got to go to Okinawa or Korea or anything like that. Kind of see the vibe of all that. I've heard it's tough, on Okinawa to do any real training because of all the restrictions and stuff on the island, and
yeah.
to do live fire and stuff like that. You either have to go to the mainland or go on one of the exercises to like the Philippines or one of the other countries.
Yeah, I think they do some stuff up at Mount Fuji,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think for some of the workups, like for First Brigade, they went to I think 29 Palms. So they all flew back there and did stuff at 29 Palms. So if you're gonna send a whole brigade for a workup, you just stay there for a while. So that's what they did. They just stayed there for I don't remember. It seemed like a long time. But
So were they like pretty much ready, like filled up as a unit about the time that your 1 year orders were ending? Is that kind of what happened?
yeah, I mean, I was hoping to go on that. I was like, because they're like, oh, there's a deployment happening. I was like, well, at least if I'm going to be in Okinawa for a year by myself, I'll get to go on a deployment.
Yeah.
So most of that'll be workups and deployment, and I'll just be it won't even be that big of a difference. But I get there, and they did pick some guys, I think, out of the group I came with,
Hmm.
like one or two. But at the time, I remember feeling like I just got left off the deployment, me and a bunch of other guys, because our names were at the bottom of the list. My last name is Real. So, on any list of Marines, I'm in the bottom quarter.
Yeah.
So they just started at the top and they're like, grab the first 0861, 0621, another 0861, 06. Okay, we're good. We got the A's and B's. We're going. And I don't know if that's true or not. That's what it felt like at the time. And I was like, damn. So I got orders to Okinawa. There's a cool deployment coming up to Iraq, but I don't get to go.
Yeah.
And
Just one
so
punch
yeah,
after another.
yeah, yeah. I was like, what the hell am I doing here?
Dude, how shitty. I mean, it's such. When I got to the fleet and I was a mechanic, within like a year of being there was a deployment that came down to go to Iraq. And, like most new guys, you want to get on a deployment. And
Yeah.
I remember not getting selected because at maintenance battalion, the whole unit didn't deploy. They would pick people out of the unit. Then you'd get reservist attachments, and then you would deploy as like a separate element. And there's not much worse than seeing like your friends and people go on a deployment while you sit back and like continue doing the day-to-day like garbage work,
Exactly. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. Especially when you start hearing the stories and stuff they're doing, and they're getting into some real. They got into some real stuff in Ramadi.
For sure. That was a tough time to be in Ramadi.
Yeah, that I remember one of the saddest parts of that was the CO brought us all together one morning, and because we lost a Corporal Leon um, was killed on that deployment, and he was one of our Marines. And so yeah, it's like, you hear these stories, some of the people that are out there. Again, because I was new to the unit, and these guys were gone all the time, but I knew a few of them, and then so you hear these stories of what they're doing. And you're like, yeah, this is why I joined. This is why I wanted to go. And you're just stuck in the back listening to the stories, and you're like, okay, well this sucks. I don't want to be here listening to the stories. I want to be there doing what they're doing. Especially when you hear you lost a guy. It's like nothing, kind of stirs you up more than be like, okay, I need to be there.
Yeah, why not bring me? Why not take
Yeah.
one extra guy? What would have hurt? Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks, man. That's always tough. Especially you lose someone. I mean, I don't know. It's for me the first 3 years. I think I missed 2 deployments. I got taken off 2 different deployments that I was supposed to go
Wow.
on, and I was like, dude, I'm not even gonna deploy. I'm not even gonna make it to Iraq. Like I was
Yeah.
there. I came in 06. So from 06 till I deployed in 09, that in between period, I'm like, dude, I'm not even gonna make it. Like the war's gonna be
Yeah.
over and stuff like that. And I knew a lot of guys actually at maintenance battalion that never made it to Iraq because of how the unit deployed. It was random. And I remember a guy who made it all the way to going to Cherry Point to get on the plane to deploy, and they sent a duty van. They're like, hey man, we had one too many guys, you're coming back. And his whole family came to see him off.
No
And
way.
it was like, dude, and he did 4 years from 05 to 09 and never deployed, which is like the
Yeah.
craziest time to have been in,
Yeah.
But so when you
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say that's almost what happened to me. That's why I only planned on doing one enlistment,
Yeah.
and that's why I re-enlisted, because I did not get a combat deployment in my first enlistment.
Yeah. There's so many guys that have gotten out that are, especially now, in the last like 10 years, that are kind of disgruntled about being in the Marine Corps because they never got to deploy. There's
Yeah.
a lot of guys I think have issues because of that. I think a lot. I don't know. I know. I don't know. I know multiple people have told me that they feel like their service didn't matter and stuff because they never deployed. And I'm like, dude, that's not your fault. That's just
Yeah.
that's just the name of the game. You're a number on a roster. If your number doesn't
Yeah.
get called, your number doesn't get called.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. And look, I mean, there's a lot of people who do deploy
Yeah.
who don't see combat
Oh yeah.
and don't. I mean, I think that a lot. I don't know. I'm gonna say something controversial. Um, People might get mad at me, but I think some. This is just my personal interaction with people who have like PTSD and stuff. I think 75% of people who claim PTSD don't have it. I think there are people who legitimately have it. I know them. And there's a lot of people though that I've met who just after being deployed, being in combat, seeing what different situations are like in a combat zone. When you got Camp Leatherneck, you've got the majority of the Marines who are in Afghanistan or in Helmand Province are in Leatherneck, and they work supply and they work admin and they do a lot of jobs that have to be done. 97% of jobs are support jobs. And I mean, even ANGLICO is a support mission. We're supporting infantry companies, or we're supporting, foreign military. We're supporting National Guard. We're supporting, door kickers. And I mean, really, the fact of the matter is, unless you're the guy with your boot kicking in the door, you're a support guy. So everybody behind him in line is a support guy. You're supporting that dude who's on the front. And there's nothing to be ashamed about with doing your job.
For sure.
Like, look, you're in the Marine Corps. You're a supply guy. You went to Afghanistan and you supplied the units. Like, you did an honorable job and you did it well. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think because our society has created this like thing around veterans that every single one of them has come back from deployment with PTSD. It's like every show you watch, every movie you watch, it's like this nice kid goes off to war and he comes back and he's, like fighting with his wife and punching the walls, and then he's got a gun in his hand by the end of the movie and he's ready to shoot somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like, Really, man? Like that's like 1% of people, maybe less. And
Maybe, yeah, way. I'd say way less.
yeah, and like 1% of 1%. But um, so there's this like expectation that if you're a Marine or a soldier or something and you go to Afghanistan, you're going to come back with these like war stories about how everything was blowing up around you and you've got PTSD, and people are expecting that of you. Like, so when you get off the plane, you get off the bus, like your family, your friends, the people you know, they're expecting these stories because that's what they've been told by society is what happens to you.
Johnny's fucked up now, you know?
Yeah. And then you get back and you're like, no, man, I sat on Leatherneck and I got the coffee bean every morning and I got Pizza Hut at night and I got to go to the chow hall and eat steak and lobster on Fridays. And oh yeah, one time some rockets hit, a mile away.
Yeah.
And I think they feel guilty, because they joined the military for a reason. They wanted to do things like it's not that everybody wants to get into combat, but nobody really wants to be left behind from the mission, right? I mean, people want to do the mission.
You don't want to be like, oh, I rode the bench while everybody was playing the game.
Yeah.
You know.
So I think they feel guilty, and then that's where you get. I think there's a lot of guilt that people get from that, from having not having those stories that are expected of them, and so this is what I've heard a lot. Like well, I don't want to talk about my deployment, or I don't want to talk about what I did. I think they feel a little bit guilty that they didn't get that war story that people expect of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then that manifests as some sort of issue, some sort of mental health issue, which to me actually seems kind of understandable.
Yeah, I mean, it's a stressor, man. It's something that people, like I mentioned before, guys get out that never even got to deploy, and they have issues with that. They have problems looking back on their service in a positive light because of that. I think you're right. I think there's a bad stigma out there for veterans that have come back with issues or whatever. That's part of the reason why I also encourage people to use their GI Bill and go to school, because it's like, here's a civilian certificate validating that I'm a normal person, that I can do normal things like graduate from college. Not that I've mentioned it before on here, advertising, my degrees in journalism and advertising, neither one of those fields you require a college degree. It requires you to be able to be good at it, but a college degree helps. And I think that I've heard so many stories at school. It blows my mind. People, think everyone's been in combat and everyone's been shot at, and everyone's been blown up, and like all this crazy stuff. They just assume, and like you said, almost nobody has. Like it's pretty honestly rare to meet people that have like been within inches of rounds flying by them. It's just not that common of a thing. I think PTSD is used a lot as an excuse for bad behavior. I think a lot of people say, "Oh shit, I got caught." Whatever. Name your crime. Yeah. Oh, it's my PTSD kicking in. Because that's, I mean, if you're a defense attorney, that's an automatic thing that people are going to go to. Like, well, he's a service member that went to Afghanistan. Yeah, 100%. Another thing is people inflating their service or inflating stuff like PTSD like that to get more benefits. They get a higher VA disability rating when they get out. There are people that think they should do whatever they can to get the highest rating no matter what, even if they've never been injured, never been hurt, never been anything, because they want that free money because they think they deserve it. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Like, I'm like, hey, I'm going to submit everything that I did, and whatever I get, I get. And if it's something flagrant, I will like push back, which I didn't. But I'm going to accept what I got. And I've had multiple people like, dude, why aren't you pushing to get 100%? You get all these things, you get all this stuff. And I'm like, because I'm not 100%. Like, I don't meet those requirements. So I think you have a lot of people that are, trying to game the system. I think you have a lot of people that are using it as an excuse for bad behavior, both in the military, outside of the military. And then, you've got your fucking, just your regular stolen valor storyteller. When I was in Iraq in 2009, we had this reservist kid who was just such a piece of shit. He was just trouble the entire deployment. And he was a Lance Corporal. I remember I was a corporal. I remember, hey man, take the trash out. I told him, I was like, go take the trash out. He's like, why don't you do it? And I'm like, what? Like, are you serious? And so that's the kind of person this kid was. Like 2/3 of the way through the deployment, one of the other reservists, his wife is friends with that dude's wife or girlfriend or something like that. And word gets back that this kid has been writing letters home, saying that he's been on the battlefield every day and he had to carry his dead buddy off the field and this other shit. And we're like, bro, we're mechanics at TQ. You know, it's like the equivalent of being like at not Leatherneck maybe, but Dwyer, you know, like a medium-sized base. It's we got a chow hall, you know?
Yeah.
Like that, what are you talking about? It's guys like that, you know? And then one other story I heard just the other day in school, I was in one of my group sessions, there was a guy who was talking about how he was homeless. You know, there's a guy about my age in my class, which normally those people are veterans. So I was like, hey, were you in the military? And no, he was a recovering like addict and he was homeless and all this stuff. And like a week ago, we were talking about he was really good friends with the guy he said was a veteran that was also homeless. And he was saying like how homeless veterans, you know, someone needs to do more for homeless veterans. And I was like, man, I kind of disagree. I was like, veterans have more benefits and more resources than anybody else. Like, name me one other person or one other group of people that has more benefits than veterans. If you're a homeless veteran for an extended period of time, I'm not talking about a day or two, but for like weeks or months, it's probably because you're not utilizing your benefits. You're probably mentally disturbed. There's something else going on because there's help there. He's trying to tell me about this guy that he met that had severe PTSD. And I was like, oh, really? Like, that's unfortunate, you know, because I know it exists. It's out there. I have friends that have severe PTSD. Yeah. But he's like, this guy got his PTSD because he was forced to shoot a kid in the head and hold a gun to another kid's head to walk in front of them to make sure the minefield was cleared. I'm like, oh my God. I didn't want to like, I wanted to be like, dude, whoever your friend is a fucking liar. Like, that shit would never fly. Like, that would never happen.
No.
You know, but it's shit like that. It's people like that spread these stories that make regular people that are no longer affected by the military because there's no draft. They don't understand. The only, like you said, the only kind of feedback they get is from the media and these fucked up stories that they promote, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. And I think that false expectation for veterans does affect them. I remember you were saying, you know, there's like people trying to get 100%. I remember when I was getting out. So I was told by whatever it was, the separations people, somebody told me like, get all your medical paperwork done before you get out with the VA. It goes way faster. So I was like, okay. So I made my appointment and I didn't have a bunch of injuries or anything. I mean, I hardly ever went to medical.
Same.
Near the end in Afghanistan, I screwed up my foot. I think it started in Germany in the workup. I had a bone. I didn't find out this later. I had a bone spur, and then I had what's called plantar fasciitis. It's like your tendon that goes from your heel to the front of your foot, and it was like super inflamed. So what it felt like every morning was like the first step you take out of the bed felt like somebody jamming a nail in my foot, and then just walking around with that all day.
Dude, I remember that your foot being fucked up when I checked an ANGLICO, actually.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that. It was really bothering me. It was so at year 9, I missed my first hike. ANGLICO did a hump. I did one with them, and it was killing my foot. And the next one came up, and I didn't do it. I went to Doc. And I'm like, look, dude, I can barely walk from my car to the COC. Like, I can't do this. So I started seeing a doctor about it. I missed my first hike, which, you know, the first time in the Marine Corps, I missed a run or a hike. But so that was in there. But I didn't have much, but I went to the doc and apparently I broke my hand one time. I remember hurting my hand really bad at 5th ANGLICO. Apparently I broke it. So they're like, oh yeah, we took an x-ray, your hand's broken. You got tinnitus. Like, you know, so they documented a few things and I really wasn't expecting to get anything, but they gave me a disability rating. And I remember going to the guy at the VA, and he's like, "Oh, I see you've been in combat." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, do you have PTSD?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Are you sure you don't have PTSD?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I would know." And he's like, "Are you sure you don't have PTSD?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really sure. Stop asking me." Because that's like what 50%. It's like an instant 50%. I don't even
know. It's quite a bit though. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I had gotten that, I mean, I would have gone to 100%. But I'm like, no, man, I don't have PTSD. I don't want that on my record. I don't need your money. Like, I'm good. I'm gonna go work. You know, I don't need your free money. And it's like there are people who actually have PTSD that need that money.
For sure.
Like
And all you're doing
no,
is clogging up the system, messing up their
yeah,
appointments and stuff like that when you do that shit.
exactly. I was like, we have mental health resources that people need. They don't need me in there faking it up.
Yeah.
Like, and I've seen people, a lot of people fake it up. I've had veterans tell me, some guys that I've met, they're like, oh yeah, you just got to do this and do that. And then I'm like, dude, you're a piece of garbage. Like, I know,
That's
I
what I
know,
said too.
like I know people who need those resources, and they're having to wait 2 months for an appointment because you're in there.
Yeah.
Like,
Dudes are showing
so
off their like disabled parking passes and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, what? Like I've seen guys do that on social media. I'm like, like that's not cool. That's not even
a disabled parking pass because they have PTSD.
just because they amped up like guys I knew that didn't really do anything, that fucking go and do this shit and like amp up their problems and get all these
Yeah,
benefits from it.
yeah, yeah.
And that's just one of the perks, I guess,
Weird. I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't heard of that one.
That's yeah, it's weird. It's unfortunate, and it's again it adds to the stigma when guys
Yeah,
are all claiming it. And for me, it's like you kind of alluded to. I don't want that shit on my record. Like, how is that gonna impact me down the road when they're like, oh, he had PTSD, he's some kind of mental health issue,
yeah,
like
exactly.
I don't need I don't know. That's just one of those things. I'm like I don't need that on my record. I did, however, with me saying all this stuff I've talked about, if you have something wrong, you should go get it documented.
Oh
I
yeah,
was near explosions and stuff in my second Afghan deployment. I remember being caught in the backblast of a SPG 9. I think SPG 9 is whatever it is. It's the recoilless rifle,
oh
and
yeah,
and almost knocked me out and shit. And I didn't go to medical or anything like that. But as I was getting out, I'm like, I might as well go get this shit checked out. So I've scheduled an appointment to go down to the TBI clinic and go through all their testing because I'm like, why not? It's free.
yeah,
If I have issues, I might as well document it now. And
yeah. Well, yeah.
for
You
the
wanted,
most part, they found almost nothing was wrong with me. They said I did have a mild TBI and stuff like that from that, but overall, I was in pretty good health. And I'm like, cool. That's all I wanted to know. And there's
yeah,
nothing wrong with going and finding out. It's when you start inflating it so you can get extra money and extra benefits. I think you're a scumbag. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, the important thing about getting stuff documented as you're getting out is because it can become an issue later. So things like
yeah,
TBI, issues like broken bones or something, you eventually get arthritis like that. So you may get a 0% disability rating in something, but in 10 years it becomes a serious issue and you can't even walk now or you can't even function or something. And now that service connected 0% becomes 30% because you can't even, maybe something that stopped, you work construction, now you can't work construction anymore because, you've got this issue in your back that you got from combat or training or whatever, and now it's affecting your work. So,
for sure.
that's why it's important to get that documented so that it is connected to your service, and then if it comes up later down the road, you can use it.
Yeah, and it's covered under medical care and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Like that's one less thing you have to worry about.
yeah,
For sure.
yeah.
So back to up at this point, you haven't even gone overseas yet. You haven't even deployed or anything like that. You when you were leaving 5th ANGLICO, you got orders to 11th Marines, correct?
Yep, yeah. I went to the regiment, 11th Marines Regiment, and showed up to another unit that was deployed.
Boom, got him again.
So there's like 3 people there. So the 11th Marines Regiment's deployed. I think there was a warrant officer, a gunnery sergeant, a couple other Marines. Didn't do a whole lot. We did like a 29 Palms regimental fire X, and so I got some FSCC experience.
Yeah.
Working the FATIDS machine and stuff.
Yeah, the Fire Support Coordination Center and the what's the FATIDS? Advanced Field Artillery.
Yeah, tactical data system or something like that.
System. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to get tactical in every acronym. You got to have at least one tactical or combat added in somewhere.
Makes it a lot cooler when you're sitting on the FATIDS chain smoking and drinking coffee.
Yeah, like, well, this computer is tactical, so I'll write mom about it, I guess.
The FSCC is like the place where 0861s do not want to go. That's like the spot, especially regimental FSCC, because you're doing mission planning and sitting in front of computers more than you are out on the OP and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're writing tab golf. Yeah, Appendix 19s, and you're just in your 316.6 all the time, and yeah.
It's good experience, though. I got to 10th Marines. I got to 210 as a sergeant, from Motor T, not knowing anything. People are showing me how to plot on a map and stuff. I don't even know anything. And I worked in the FSCC, the Fire Support Coordination Center, under Gunny Klein,
Mm.
and that right there was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because he was such a well-read 0861. He was so smart and knowledgeable about the MOS and the application of the MOS, and working with the infantry and stuff like that. That for me, working in the FSCC, although I didn't want to do it, I couldn't have asked for a better person to kind of shape my
Yeah.
understanding of fires and stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty beneficial. Did you get? I mean, it sucks to do it working at the FSCC at Regiment, but do you feel like it was beneficial?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of knowledge in there. I mean, just in doing that fire X as well, and that gunny was not easy on us. I mean, when the regiment would move positions, we'd get to a new location or something or wherever in 29 Palms we were moving as we're doing different phases, and we'd get there, we'd set up, we get all that, we get 2 tents set up, all our comm gear, you got fold-out tables, you got all your radios, we'd set up comms, we'd establish comms, and then it'd be like midnight, the rest of the regiment's sleeping, and he'd be like, you know what, comm's not good enough. Break it down. We'd break down everything, all the
Oh,
comm, the tents. We'd put everything in our trucks. We would drive maybe 100 yards and set it all up again. Um, and we did that a couple of times. And so it'd be like 5 in the morning. And he's like, okay, establish a radio watch. We start again in an hour.
man,
It's like,
just getting his
uh,
money's worth out of you.
oh yeah. So we did, but that was good experience. I mean, that was, um, setting up an FSCC, establishing comms, um, and then learning all of that terminology with the coordinated firing lines and no fire areas and how planning happens and how you do coordinated fire and how you approve missions. The processes for all that was really important, and
For sure.
yeah, it was really good to learn.
Yeah, it makes you more well-rounded. You understand. You can, as the fire support expert, you can advise the ground force commander on what is actually happening, because you've played different roles. You understand different parts other than sitting on the OP and doing call for fire, which a lot of people think that's what all FOs do. It's like, dude, there's a lot of fire support planning that goes into that, and a lot of like detail that, that's what makes us different, makes us professionals at doing that. And having varied experience outside of the observation post makes you a better asset for the ground force commander, because you can give accurate depictions of what's occurring. Hey, yeah, they're taking, it's happening on the gun line because they're doing a high angle shot, so it takes a little longer to crank the barrel up. Like shit like that you don't know unless you know. That
Yeah,
you can brief.
yeah, yeah,
So once you were there, after that you went to 1-5, correct?
yeah,
And
yeah. I got tasked with that. Yeah, 1-5 Mu.
so were you bummed that you're going on a MEU? Was it a MEU to Iraq or Afghanistan, or was it just a regular old MEU?
This is just a Westpac meal. I got tasked to be the naval gunfire chief as a corporal,
Oh, nice.
um, and I had a Navy lieutenant and 2 radio operators, 2 Lance Corporal radio operators, um, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, okay, well, I know how to call for naval guns, but I was like this like weird in the middle bastard child who belonged to 11th Marines, but then chopped to 1-5, and they didn't know what to do with me. So I was checking in with them all the time, but then I was also sort of operating out of 11th Marines, and there was like one sergeant there at the regiment at that time, because then everybody else deployed and went somewhere. And I'm like, hey man, what do I do? And he's like, well, I don't know, practice, naval gunfire. So I was like, all right, whatever. He's like, we do own this like hooch. So I went and found that hooch like over at Polgus. I don't think it's there anymore. I lost Polgus. Um, and I'm like, all right, well, this is before I got like my comm guys attached to me. And I'm like, well, I'm going to make like a little like hangout area for us, or like a little area we can practice doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I go into this hooch, and looks like it was probably built in the 1940s, and I don't think anybody had been in there since the 1980s. And it was just boxes of MREs that rats had eaten through and all this stuff. So I cleaned that thing out and got that thing all ready, like set up like like a comm station. And I was like, all right, yeah, we'll be able to like do a little backyard ops out of here with my team when they come in. And then as soon as I got that all set up, 1-5 was like, nope, you're gonna come over here and check in with us every day. You're not going to Polgus anymore. So
Of course, that's the way it works.
yeah, Yeah. I was like, all right, well, I guess somebody will benefit from all that work.
How was the Mew though? Did you guys do anything interesting while you were out there?
Not a lot. We did a lot of um, desert ports, United Arab Emirates, Dubai. We went and did a shoot in Djibouti. So some guys went down to Lemonnier, and I just went on an OP the whole time. And
That's not bad. I don't mind the OP up there and off of Arta Beach and that whole little area, that training
no, it's
area in
pretty cool.
Djibouti.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We went.
it's cool that the French Legionnaires have their, or whoever they are, the French Foreign Legion, have their little camp there and everything, and their obstacle
Yeah.
course that goes up that hillside.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that.
Oh, it's pretty wild, man. You look at it, you're like, man, you could definitely die doing that one. Like that's a yeah, that's a pretty legit.
Damn.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah.
But
DJ's not
yeah, we
bad.
did
Other than it's
that.
hot as shit.
We went to we went to Kuwait for a couple months. I don't know, maybe 6, 8 weeks. Um, what's that? Camp Beering, I
Camp
think.
Buring, go out to OP10.
Yeah. Um, I was the naval gunfire guy. I had an 0861 at the end of my name. So they're like, we don't know you're on ammo watch. So we did a ton of shooting ranges. I was on ammo watch half the time. But then they let me go in and I did room clearing guys. So I was attached to a headquarters company of 1-5, which is like the CO and the first sergeant and the gunny. And you got some comm guys and then the naval gunfire team. And so we did some room clearing stuff with the 81. So you got 81 millimeter platoon and the cap platoons. And so I got to do some stuff with them. But, they're all infantry dudes. And they're like, who the hell is this naval gunfire guy?
Yeah.
Never got to. When was the last time somebody really shot naval guns, like, in combat?
Yeah, last time I heard, the thing everyone told me was in Somalia. I guess there was some kind of shoot there, like some kind of
Yeah,
naval
I
gunfire
heard
shoot.
so.
But
I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe.
yeah, I don't know if that's true either. Who knows, man? It's one of those things. It's like we learn. They're probably. I bet the guys that are in now that they've shifted to the Pacific and they're doing these small island campaign things, I bet they're probably putting more focus on naval gunfire, or at least I hope so, because that's the obvious choice for,
Oh yeah.
providing fire support for the guys that are on these small islands.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Exactly.
So like you got all these like training, you're in these units and you're doing a lot of training. You're not getting to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, which is what you wanted. So
Yeah.
are you like bitter? Are you like, fuck, man, like I'm not getting the deployment, the combat experience that I wanted, or are you just enjoying the ride?
No, honestly, this is I did get better, and it's one of now right now I'm going to school. I'm doing a organizational leadership for school, and I'm looking back at a lot of things that because the Marine Corps is a great place to study leadership.
Yeah.
And I did get bitter, and I sort of lost my motivation for a while, and I had a couple of bad leaders, I explained, you show up to a unit, there's nobody there. There's one sergeant that they left behind because he can't even make his own bed. So I had a couple units like that, sort of the outcast at 1-5 because they're like, who the hell is this naval gunfire guy? We don't even know what you do.
Yeah.
And I was a young corporal. It wasn't like I was walking in as a staff NCO, like briefing people on what I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got bitter for a little bit. And on that deployment, because my daughter was born while I was on that MEU. So when I got home, she was 6 months old.
That's crazy.
And yeah, it was kind of rough. So we had thought, like, when I got to 11th Marines, they're like, oh yeah, you're not deploying for like a year and a half. So my wife and I talked, we're like, yeah, let's have a kid. And then like a month later, they're like, oh no, just kidding, you're going on a deployment. And she's already pregnant, and we're like, oh great, okay. So yeah, I got home, met my daughter. I couldn't get off that bus fast enough because I had 1-5 checked me out of their unit while we were still on ship.
Really?
And checked me into the battery that was, or the 11th Marines. It was weird. It was almost immediate. I didn't have to do any checkout. So
nice.
I rode, instead of riding the bus back with 1-5, I rode with the Arty battery, but I didn't belong to them. I belonged to the regiment.
Yeah.
So the gunny is like, yeah, everybody form up. And I went over and I'm like, hey, I'm regiment. I'm out. I'm gonna go report into the regiment. And he's like, okay, who are you? Like,
Who are
he'd
you?
never seen me before. Like, um, I'm like, I'm out. So I ran over to, I'd been like texting my wife, and she was there with my daughter. So I got to meet my daughter there at Las Pulgas off the bus, from deployment.
That's
And,
awesome.
that was, you get pretty emotional at that. It's like, dang
Oh,
it,
I bet, dude. First time you
and
met your kid, and she's
yeah,
6 months old.
yeah, yeah. And I had heard her give birth because so we knew that she was in the hospital. I got like a Red Cross message that my wife was giving birth while I was on ship. We were floating around the Indian Ocean, and they gave me a sat phone. And I called back like 2 or 3 times, and on like the second call, the third call, uh, my father-in-law picked up, and he was in the delivery room with my wife, and she was pushing
Oh man.
at the time. So I heard her give birth. Like I heard my daughter cry, and like I heard her give birth while I was on the sat phone, standing on the deck of the USS Tarawa in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
Uh, it was pretty crazy.
Was there anybody there with you when you went?
No, they just gave me my sat phone. I went up there by myself, and I just sat there by myself and talked to it. Yeah,
That's
it
got to be
was.
one of the loneliest walks back when you hang up the phone and you're back on ship and now you're cut off again.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's pretty rough. The first sergeant of 1-5, the headquarters 1-5, is the one who gave me the sat phone, so I had to just bring it back to him. And I was like, yeah, I had a daughter. Like, and he's like, all right, good to go, man. But because I was pretty bitter, like you said, I was pretty bitter at that point. And but 1-5, they had a good structured, like pretty decently structured leadership there. They also, you know, they got in some trouble. 81's got in trouble while we were in Kuwait with some hazing stuff, but there was some decent, at least structure there. And that first sergeant and the company gunny, helped straighten me out. And by the time I got back from that deployment, I had stopped working out, before. I was like kind of in bad shape, and they got me back into it. And I was working out again, and I showed back up, and I was, kind of back in decent shape. And, they, pushed some motivation back into me.
Oh, that's good, man. That's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's everybody needs it at some point. Your career after you do one enlistment, or if you're in for an extended amount of time, it just becomes a drain. Especially if you
Yeah.
have toxic people that affect you at any way. In your
Yeah.
leadership chain of command, it just becomes a drain where you're like, man, fuck this. Like this, I'm wasting my time. Like what
Yeah.
am I wasting my time for? There's got to be some positive back to the Marine for them to feel like it was worth it.
Yeah.
At least give you something. And you're getting kicked left and right. Orders to Okinawa, orders to the regiment.
And everybody's deployed. I show up and people are deployed, and I'm like, what is happening? Like,
And you're in a combat MOS that's in high demand. That's
yeah.
there was no shortage of like requests for 0861s and stuff during the global
Oh
war on
yeah.
terrorism, especially as guys became JTAC qualified and stuff like that. So once you left there, you went to the schoolhouse, right? Was this before? Did you do any other deployments before you went to the schoolhouse?
No, I went back to 11th Marines, showed up again at the regiment. Everybody's gone again. I'm a sergeant at this point. I get promoted to sergeant right after the deployment, after that MEU, and I am the senior enlisted guy at 11th Marines Regiment FSCC. It's supposed to be a master guns,
Yeah.
and I had like 4 people. And so I got promoted like 3 days ago, and now I'm in charge of the FSCC. And then they're like, oh, by the way, we're doing another regimental fire X in a month. You have to write the tab golf and the appendix, for the appendix 19. You got to write the fire support plan. And
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, I don't know how to do that. So I just started figuring it out. I talked to a gunny that I knew who was at one of the battalions, and we didn't have enough guys. Normally, when you have a regimental FSCC, you have a forward and you have your main and your forward, so you can launch guys out. You can set up comms, transfer control of fire. Then the main moves over, and then that. So I didn't have enough of that. So he agreed to be my forward for the FSCC. I pulled some fast ones on some of the companies. Or some of the batteries. I had one buddy, a sergeant, who was at one of the batteries, who was really good on the Aphatids. I mean, he was like an Aphatids guru, and I was like, well, we can't do this without an Aphatids guru. So I talked to him and I'm like, hey man, can you talk to your battery and see if you can get pushed to the regiment? And his CO was like, nope, not a chance. So I walked into the 11th Marines Regiment S1, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it. And I told the like Lance Corporal sitting there, and I'm like, hey man, Master Guns over here in my office at the 11th Marines Regiment needs Sergeant so and so. He needs orders from Alpha Battery up to the regimental FSCC. And he's like, all right, good to go. So he cuts them orders, and then my buddy goes to his CO and checks out, and he's like, what the hell? Like, I mean, he was pissed.
I bet. Nobody wants to lose a good FATEDS operator.
No. And so he came up to the regiment, but I was like, whatever, I'm not, I'm the guy in the position. I need people. I'm going to pull them. If I need them for the regiment, I'm going to pull them. I'm just going to pretend that chair in there that's for the Master Guns that he's given me, he's telling me to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the chair I'm filling. That's the billet.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, because if things go bad, it's going to be on you, so you might as well set yourself up,
Yeah, it's like, I need guys. I got 4 guys here. I'm supposed to have 12, or something. So anyway, did a fire X. That went fine. And then I got orders. I was coming close to the end, and what did I re-enlist at that time, or I extended? I don't remember. But I'm like, okay, well, maybe my next unit, I'll get a combat unit. I'll actually get a deployment. And then I get orders for Fort Sill to be an instructor.
And nobody wants that.
They're like, you're going to spend 3 years teaching MASOC. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, okay, all right, challenge accepted. But at this point, I mean, I had friends that I went through MLS school with who had 3 combat deployments at this point.
Yeah.
2, 3 combat. And I'm like, it's pretty disheartening to have that.
You're a peer, supposedly,
yeah.
right? But you're a peer that hasn't ever actually gone and done the job.
Yeah. So I'm like, great. I'm the fobbit. Like, I'm that guy. I'm the dude who sits in the rear with the gear. Great. Like, outstanding. Like, this does not feel awesome.
Yeah. It sucks. And that's why guys, like we talked about before, guys get out and they're bitter, or they look back on their service and they're like, man, I didn't do shit, compared to everybody else. And that's the bad thing, is that we compare ourselves to other people. Another thing I've said on the podcast a lot is, it's like, we've all done more than somebody and less than somebody else. There's only one guy out there that's done more than everybody else, and he's probably fucked up, from doing so much shit. So it's like, quit trying to compare yourself to other people and just be happy that you got to do what you did. Even people that didn't go to combat or anything got once in a lifetime experiences just by being in the Marine Corps, by going to boot camp, by going to the rifle range and getting hundreds of free rounds to shoot, by going out on hikes with people. Like, these are things that normal people don't really do and stuff like that. And I don't think people appreciate it enough.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you're right.
You're right. It's disheartening, though, when you're watching all your buddies deploy and you're like, what the fuck, man? This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty rough. And then, after I left 5th ANGLICO, then 2nd Brigade, I hear about them. They did a deployment to Iraq. So all my buddies who were still there, who had 2-year contracts or 2-year orders for Okinawa, they went on a deployment after I left. I was like, man, I can't win. But it taught me a lot of humility, and not that I really needed it, but it was like, okay, just, suck it up, do the best you can do where you're going. And, you're here for a reason. You'll get your chance,
for sure.
To do what you need to do. So yeah, I went into Fort Sill and I was like, okay, you got 3 years. I bought a house out there, moved the family. By this time, when my son was born, when we were in Oklahoma. So, it was me and my wife and my daughter. And I was like, all right, go check in, learn how to do this job.
How'd you like Fort Sill? I mean, I hear some people say they hated it. It was the worst time of their life. And other people, really enjoy Oklahoma and the area and the options, the outdoor opportunities and stuff like that. Where do you fall in that spectrum?
Well, I bought a nice house about 20 minutes north of Lawton. Brand new neighborhood in the town of Elgin that was built up there. And, what I like, if you hide in the barracks or hide in your house, I could see what it would suck. But I got out and did a bunch of fishing, and I took the family camping. You got the what is it? There's a wildlife refuge there, the Wichita Mountain Wildlife Refuge, which is beautiful. There's good camping in there. There's a lot of good fishing. Um, and so it's not the greatest place in the world, but where is, I mean, so, well, I'm in Hawaii now. It's decent, but, um, it's like, I think every place is what you make of it,
For
right? I
sure.
mean,
Yeah.
you gotta make it good. And if you just spend 3 years being miserable because you don't like it, like, well, that's on you, sort of.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not the greatest. What's really bad, I felt sorry for the Marines awaiting training at the battery. Like
Man.
that, there needs to be a different program for that. And I spent my first year there as a platoon sergeant, so I didn't instruct for the first year. I just was a platoon sergeant at the battery, and I tried to come up with things to keep people busy, because just sitting there tightening racks all day long for 4 months while you wait to pick up class, that's a pretty miserable situation for Marines to be in, and there needs to be a different program in how they handle that.
Yeah. When I got there, I'm glad I went through as a sergeant because I didn't have to deal with some of the same like shenanigans, because the Marines awaiting training and even just the guys going through the schoolhouse at our boots get treated like shit by the or they did. I don't know about now, but at the time they got treated like children at the battery. It's like
Yeah,
you're teaching people, you're making them responsible for controlling fire support, like shooting cannons or calling in fire support and stuff like that. But you won't allow them to have a pocket knife. I saw a kid get either page 11 or NJP because he had a pocket knife. It's
wow.
like, yeah, it's like, and when I said something, because I was like, why, what's the big deal? The first sergeant there at the time, I think it was first sergeant up, was like, the big deal is these fucking morons, we've already caught two throwing knives back and forth at each other, see how close they could get. And I'm like, God damn it, fucking Marines, they're standing on one side of the room from the other and seeing how close they could stab to the wall to the other dude.
Yeah.
And someone got stabbed.
That's the fault of them being bored. I mean, that's not their fault. That's the fault of how we were handling that and what we could do. I mean, we didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah. What can you
But,
do,
yeah, First Sergeant Up's a great dude. He's a former 0861
For sure.
JTAC, and that guy's awesome. He went on to be a sergeant major of an infantry battalion, I think. But yeah, it's like, they would do so many stupid things. We had guys getting legal trouble out in town, some dudes thrown in jail. We had one guy getting so much trouble, two guys getting so much trouble, they're spending like 15 years in prison.
Holy shit, really? Jesus.
Yeah. So we had a lot of, disciplinary problems, but so, I mean, with MASOC, how it would work, because I was the 0861 as the platoon sergeant, usually had one different MOS, you had like an 0811 and 08, 41 or whatever the other one, the FDC guy or something. You'd have one different MOS be each platoon sergeant. And so you had like 3 platoon sergeants there at a time, 3 or 4. And what would happen is I'd get, we had 30 spaces for MASOC class. And I would get 30 boots in and line them up and be like, okay, in 4 weeks, or 3 weeks when the next class graduates, you guys are going in. And then 2 days before the class picked up, I'd get you guys. There'd be like
lap movers,
12 NCOs would show up. And they had first priority, because nobody's going to let corporals and sergeants sit at an MOS school for
an extra month or 2, yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, no, these guys need to get back to their units. So then I had to go out, form them up, and be like, hey, 12 of you, I read off the names. Like, you guys, sorry, go back to your rooms. You're picking up, you're going to the next class. And the reason that was happening is because there was that huge push for 0861s. There was the bonus. They were pushing like a 60 grand bonus. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of lap movers. They were just getting, they were standing up ANGLICOs. They were expanding the what did they call it at the time? There was the teams they were pushing at the infantry company.
The FIST, the fire support.
Yeah, they were doing FIST teams, and I don't remember they were expanding 0861s everywhere. They were just sticking them in everywhere.
Yeah.
And so there was a big push to get NCOs to lap move, and so that was sort of the deal of why people were spending so much time awaiting training, is because for like 2 years, every class was like a third of it was NCOs.
Yeah, I think we had like 8 in mine, something like that.
Yeah. So it'd be different every time.
So quite a bit though. That's a quite a, and you get bumped back. I mean, the course at Fort Sill alone is 6 weeks, right? Wasn't that the link?
Yeah, it was like 6 weeks, 5, 6. Yeah.
So there's 6 weeks added to your time at Fort Sill if you get bumped automatically.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty rough for the Marines. I felt bad for them. I mean, I tried to find stuff to do, so I found like a building that belonged to us that was right next to the barracks, and it was just this trash building. And I had construction experience, so I got Marines in there and we cleaned it out. And I tried to set it up like a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we cleaned it up. I got sourced materials through the Army, and we remodeled that place and set up a bunch of computers. And I was like, well, at least I can get them in here. They can do their MCIs. We can get them ahead. I can do maybe some MASOC primer courses
Yeah.
and start teaching them basic call for fire and doing some of these things to keep them busy.
Something
So that
productive.
so they're doing something rather than just sitting in their rooms like tightening racks. Yeah, it's basically all they're doing. So yeah. So how was it when you came through MASOC? I mean, what was like sort of your perceptions and how that went as a lap mover?
So for me, I was kind of mad because I got to 210. So I got back from Iraq and I lap moved in 2009. I was in Iraq and I was part of the whole bonus, the group of people that got bonuses and stuff like that. The funny thing is when I lap moved, I didn't even know there was a bonus. I just wanted to get away from Motor T. And after they approved my lap move, they're like, hey, you get a bonus. I'm like, oh, cool. How much? And then they told me and I'm like, oh shit. And it's tax free because I'm in Iraq. And then right after that, I got promoted to sergeant too because the Motor T MOS cutting score for promotion was so much higher than the 0861. So literally, I got promoted right after my lap move got approved and stuff too. Wow. And I expected to come back and go straight to the MOS school and then the unit. And what happened was I came back and I was on my post-deployment leave, and I get a call. They're like, hey, you need to check into 210 on Monday. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not even in the state. I'm in Tennessee, like I'm on post-deployment leave. Can you slide it to the right? And I don't know if that affected it or not, but they pushed me to the right like a month. And then when I got to 210, they told me, they're like, hey, your MOS school is not for like till June. This is in November of 09. So wow. I think I went to in like June of 2010. So that whole time, I'm just going to the field. I did Fort Bragg, which was the East Coast Division Fires, exercise where they have all the regiments come or all the battalions come out with the regiment. And so I got to do a Bragg, got to do a bunch of backyard field ops and stuff like that. And I felt really well prepared for, MOS school. And just getting there, it was, it's like every other MOS school. It's super basic. Because you got to teach the lowest common denominator. And it was just funny watching kids fall asleep, trying to stay awake and stuff during like land nav classes, like indoor land nav classes or call for fire classes and stuff. Cause you want to get out and do stuff. I thought the course itself was really good. I thought the land nav was really good. I almost stepped on a rattlesnake. I remember out there when I was doing my land nav course. And I think stuff like that is such a, I really appreciated land nav, especially because when I was in MCT, you go through land nav, but it was bullshit. I remember getting to the end and there was a female instructor checking off someone's card and was like, oh, you meant to put this one right. Oh, you meant to put this one right, just to get them done because she wanted to go home, and so it was like, I'm like, this is bullshit. This is garbage. So I was nice to go to a place that had like a legitimate land nav over a lot of terrain, mountains, crossing the creeks, and all kinds of stuff. So I thought all that was really good. And then naval gunfire, I got more out of your course than I did naval gunfire because the naval gunfire class is a lot of focus because you already know target location at this point. So you just got to learn the format for the call for fire because it's different. For those that don't know, it's a little bit different for naval gunfire. But they also had like a 2-week period where you're learning a FATIDS at naval gunfire course. And that was just like, Jesus Christ, man. Anytime you're in a FATIDS course, you want to blow your brains out. Yeah. So that was my only part I didn't like. But MOS school was cool. Some of the NCOs I was there with were really good dudes. I still talk to some of them, that I was in the course with. Some of them I don't talk to at all. Some of them were douchebags and stuff like that. Just like there's douchebags and stuff everywhere. But I thought it was good. And then I got back to 10th Marines. And then as soon as I got back, they're like, hey, you're going to be deploying with 3-6 as the fires chief. So I did more field ops, and then I went to Chiefs course, as soon as they could send me to Chiefs course. And then I came back. And like you, attaching to 5th Marines as the fire support guy, as the naval, or whatever the position was, the naval gunfire chief, I attached to 3-6 as the fires chief, but I was in Chiefs course while they were at EMV and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So when I got there, they were like, everyone was going on pre-deployment leave. So I literally showed up and they're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm the fires chief, you know, and I'm a sergeant. And I replaced a Staff Sergeant Hahn, who's now a first sergeant. He just went and did the field exercise with them in my place so I could go to Chiefs course. So I didn't know anybody, you know, and I'm the same way. I walk in like, what's up? They're like, hey, we're going on pre-deployment leave. Like, and I'm showing up to formations and stuff and nobody knows who I am. And, you know, it's tough, but I don't know. My lat move experience was cool. I remember getting to 10th Marines and just being so pumped, you know, that I'm finally getting to go to the field. I'm finally getting to go train and do like Marine shit. And it sounds like people that go to the field all the time in artillery and infantry are like, why would you want to do that? But when you're a motor team mechanic at 2nd Maintenance Battalion, you're basically a factory worker that comes in from 7 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon, and you're turning wrenches, and you get an hour off for lunch in the afternoon. And that's it, you know, and it's fake motivation. You got NCOs that have never done anything other than boot camp. So they use screaming and yelling as like their motivation. And it's just like, you feel like you're not doing anything. And like you said, it's hard for the support people to like understand that you do play a huge role, you know, in the big picture. Like those trucks have to get fixed. Those, you know, shit has to happen, or the guys that need them can't use them. But it's a tough pill to swallow when you join the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps thinking I was going into the infantry, only to find out that I was open contract. You know, I had to pick open contract right before I left. So, so getting to 10th Marines was awesome for me. And I remember going back, like calling my buddies at 2nd Maintenance Battalion, which is just down the road, be like, hey, let's go get lunch or whatever. And I remember going back to Maintenance Battalion and walking through the shop to find one of my friends, and just people looking so miserable, you know, walking around in their coveralls with their heads down. And this kid came up to me who was a boot when I was there, and he's like, oh, you're Sergeant Kramer? And I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, you're the one that got out. Like, how did you lat move? And I'm like no one even knows. I'm like, dude, just go talk to the career planner, man. Like two people, I went there for lunch one day and two people stopped me and they're like, you're the one that got out. Like, how do you do that? You know, and it was just such a different Marine Corps for me. And it just felt like people wanted to be there. It was like more serious. Like, hey, we're doing fires, man. Like, we're shooting live rounds. And my first field op, I had a 155 round land 50 meters from me at OP5 on Camp Lejeune. You know, it was a check round for my very first field op. You know, I hadn't even gone to MOS school, and I hear this boom, and I'm like, damn, like this is a lot louder, you know. And it becomes a completely different Marine Corps experience for me. You know, I was glad I did the lat move and stuff like that. Did you, because you hadn't gotten to do like kind of what you wanted to do, did you ever consider lat moving?
No. You know, at this point I knew that TACP school was a thing, and I was like, that's where I want to go. I want to go TACP school at some point. I want to go to ANGLICO. I want to drop bombs. I want to call in medevacs. So, you know, and what helped me with that was while I was at Fort Sill. So I said I did that first year as a platoon sergeant. I don't know how good of an instructor I was when you came through, but when I first started, I mean, like one of my first classes I ever gave was like the other instructors, they were just like, one day they just didn't want to work, I guess. And they're like, hey, go teach the CLERF class, you know, on the laser rangefinder. And so I had no experience teaching. All I had was the PowerPoint, and I just sat there and read the PowerPoint slides.
Oh, it's the worst.
And everybody was falling asleep. And after that experience, I was like, this is the stupidest class in the world. Once I got put in charge of MASOC, I went through and I redid all the PowerPoints. It's not that they were really bad, but they were not simplified enough to make the material make sense. Yeah. And the laser rangefinder classes was just like 150 words on a slide. And I got rid of the PowerPoint entirely for that class. I just pulled out the laser rangefinders with the instruction cards, and I took everybody outside, and I said, "You're going to learn by doing. We're just gonna play with the laser rangefinders, and I'm gonna have you do the tasks that you would actually do on an OP. I don't care if you know the like width of the, you know, the actual beam and
beam dispersion and stuff.
It's so stupid. I'm like, you know, I can tell you while we're all outside and we're using them, and I'd be like, you know what safety rules to follow, and I can tell you that stuff. but sitting in a classroom with
It's the worst.
AC running in the background and just reading slides, it was so stupid. I felt really bad for that class, and I felt embarrassed for myself. I was like, this is dumb. Um, so I got rid of that class, just did it by practical, application. Just let's go outside and learn. Um, and and then I got introduced to PISSOF, the Precision Strike Suite Special Operations Forces. Did you ever use that program? Did you
Oh
ever
yeah,
do?
I was certified in it as well.
Um, so I started doing classes teaching that with Master Sergeant Kepler. We were traveling to the MEFs on each coast and teaching that class on how to use that program. And then I got certified as an evaluator. So I was one of like 2 or 3 evaluators in the Marine Corps. And we had this order so that was just a user class. That was like, this is how you use this program. And for those that don't know, it's a program that, I'll try to say it right, because it's sort of a classified program, but everybody knows what it is. The only thing that's classified about it is the actual numbers that it produces when you
Yeah,
use it.
you can
That's all
Google
that's
it.
classified.
Yeah.
Is that you just can't give out the actual numbers that it produces. But what it does is it provides you extremely accurate coordinates for precision guided munitions.
Yep.
So, and there's accuracy and there's precision. Accuracy is how close a grid is to the actual point on the earth. And then precision is just the number of digits that you give, whether it's a 6-digit grid or a 10-digit grid. A 6-digit grid can be more accurate than a 10-digit grid. I mean, you can give somebody a 10-digit grid and you're a mile off.
Yeah.
And I can give somebody a 6-digit grid and it goes right through a window. So so this program gives you very accurate and precise coordinates for real places on Earth, and then that's fed to a precision guided munition. But the Joint Chiefs of Staff issued an order that each service had to have their own instruction program for creating instructors and users. So I wrote it took me a few months, took me like 3 months, but I wrote an instructor course for that. So it was how to teach people. It was certifying instructors in how to teach that program. So I would bring people out and I practiced on some Army guys and officers and some Marines, but I got introduced to that, and that was like, when I got into that, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go be a JTAC.
For sure.
So I talked to a JTAC who was one of my fellow instructors. He had been at MSOB for like 5 years, and you needed like somebody to like sponsor you as enlisted to get into TACP school, and we didn't have any billets like at MESOC. There's no billets from Fort Sill to go to TACP school. So he called some of his buddies. He said, yeah, this guy, he knows what he's doing. And I got like an MSOB spot or a recon spot or something like that.
Nice.
They gave it to me and sent me to TACP school at EWTG PAC in Coronado before I even left Fort Sill.
Oh, that's good.
Because I needed that so that I could get orders to ANGLICO.
Nice.
So because being at Fort Sill, once you get done at Fort Sill, your monitor kind of gives you your choice. He's like,
really?
all right, yeah, I know that sucks. So where do you want to go? And I was like, look, I haven't had any deployments. I've been at Fort Sill for 3 years. I want to go to ANGLICO. They're constantly deploying. Mm-hmm. So I got TACP school. That was awesome. I just sat in my room. I got a hotel room right there on base, like 2 feet away from the schoolhouse, and just made postcards or flashcards. And I just sat in my room all night, every night. I was like, I am acing this course. There's no way I'm gonna not do well in this course, and just studied for like 5 hours every night. And
what did you think about the course? Did you find it challenging or?
Yeah, it was good. I thought it was pretty decent. It could have maybe been a little bit longer, but maybe not. I don't know. It's. I had a decent experience. I had good instructors. I had good combat experience instructors, and we went out to 29 Palms to do our final course to get certified, or our final controls to get certified, and I just did what I told my students at MESOC. MESOC, I always told my students, sit behind the guy who's doing the call for fire and and go a lot, do the call for fire with him, like behind him as practice, and be able to jump in at any moment. So that's what I did with all of my controls. Anytime somebody else was doing a control, whether it was in the simulator or up on the OP, I just sat behind them. I listened. I picked out their target. I ran the mission in my head. I wrote everything down, the 9-line and final attack headings, everything that I would do. That way, if somebody drops dead, I can pick up the radio right then and just continue the call, that mission. And that helped a lot. So that was a good course, and I got back to Fort Sill, and they sent me to First ANGLICO.
I think TCP school is one of those ones where it can be challenging. There's parts of it that are challenging, parts of it that are kind of easy if you're a forward observer already, because the call for fire portions are obviously pretty simple. But it's weird. There were guys that I knew that I thought were great, fire supporters and stuff like that, that didn't make it through the course, and guys that I didn't think were so great, or maybe whatever, that did make it. It was really hard to tell who would graduate from the course, because guys broke under different types of pressure.
Yeah.
And I like what you said about sitting behind the people. I think overall, Marine Corps JTACs are really good about, dude, everyone's listening to the radio. We're all listening to the control that's going on. And then we're all debriefing as a group together. And, that kind of grows, everyone has to have a little bit of thick skin, because sometimes I'm debriefing someone, when I was a JTAC-E, as a staff sergeant, I'm obviously debriefing people that outrank me and stuff like that. But that doesn't matter at that point. That's one of those, that's something I really liked about being a JTAC and, stuff like that, is the professionalism of it. And I think everyone fully understood, or at least a majority of the people fully understood, the implications of the job and the seriousness of, if you fuck up, it's not like I'm a postal guy and I forgot to drop off the mail. If I give the wrong coordinates, I'm dropping a bomb on something I wasn't supposed to drop a bomb on. And it's just, and I think a lot of guys do a very good job of being very professional and very serious. There's a lot of 0861s that don't want to become JTACs because of that, because there's so much pressure and the seriousness of the job. It's like, I'm getting paid the same as the other dude. Why would I want to go add this extra stress,
No, that's what I really liked about being a JTAC, is it's a pure meritocracy.
Yeah.
In that class, we had majors, we had F-18 combat pilots, we had helicopter pilots, we had a couple of SEALs in that class. And it doesn't matter, there's at some units, you get this feeling as a junior Marine that might is right. So whatever, that if he has one more, rank than you, then it doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. He's right because he's higher ranked than you. And that's a feeling sometimes you get. And it's a little bit jading. But when you're doing, you're running 9 lines and you're calling in airstrikes, it is obvious who knows what they're doing and who doesn't. And it doesn't matter if you're a major or a sergeant, or you're some special operator, or you're just a dude from the battalion. You don't know who's going to do it correctly. And until they get on the radio and you hear them, you're like, yeah, that guy knows what he's doing. And that guy doesn't. And there's no room for people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and you quickly gain a reputation because it's such a small community. Like, if someone's a bad controller, people know that, and the people that are in charge of the range know that, and they know to, like, all right, I need to be, like, really right on this dude's shoulder if he's dropping live ordnance, because I've seen, I'm sure you have as well. I mean, you see some ridiculous stuff on the OP, guys do shit, and you're like, what the fuck? What were you thinking, bro? I had one kid, man, it's the only time it ever happened. Well, maybe it happened twice, but I had one kid when I was an evaluator. I had to go to his company commander and his company first sergeant while we were on deployment on the MEU and be like, this kid's not allowed to control live air, man. He's not allowed to control anything if I'm not there. Like, if I'm there, then we will talk about it, but I can't even get him to do sims correctly without fucking bombing his own position, or, he's not writing down holding areas for rotary wing on his map. He doesn't even really know where they're at. And shit like that. It's like these simple mistakes. Wow. It's like, dude, you're going to get someone killed. And he never got designated, which, for those that don't know, when you go to school, you go to TCP school and you get qualified, but you still can't control unless you have an instructor or an evaluator sitting over your shoulder until you go through the entire designation phase. And then they sign off like, okay, he's done all these different controls. He's dropped a bomb during the day, during the night, using a laser, using whatever, using artillery as a mark, all these different wickets you have to hit. Then they sign off and say, okay, you're designated, meaning you can go and control on your own without supervision. And people like that kid, I'm like, dude, it's just not safe. It's just unsafe, and we can't fuck around in this kind of job. You can't mess around with people being unsafe.
No, yeah, not at all. I mean, you hear the horror stories and bad things that happen, and yeah, you can't. It's just not tolerated. It doesn't matter who does it. And I remember there's one guy in my TCP. I think he was a CH-46 pilot, and I don't think he graduated. He was. They were trying. They were really trying to walk him through it, and I just remember sitting behind him doing the missions as we were on the OP in 29 Palms, and I was like, I really wanted to jump up and be like, check your, you're going to want to check your final attack headings.
Mm-hmm.
And, just little stuff like that. And if you screw that up, I mean, you're outside your final attack headings. If that plane comes in outside of final attack headings and you don't abort them, fail.
Yeah.
So it's like, that stuff's important. So yeah, anyway, that's why I really liked it though, was because of how demanding and, how much of it was of a meritocracy.
Sure.
It's like you got to know what you're doing, and everybody's listening.
Everybody's listening, and man, there's not much worse than doing a bad control and everyone hears it, and you do that kind of walk away from the hill, your head down, and everyone's kind of like whispering about you or looking at you like, oh, you fucked up, like.
Yeah.
Luckily, that only happened to me that I can remember one time. It was one of my first times, and I got chewed out on the tower. And I was like, oh man, I'm such a piece of shit. That fuck. But I'm the kind of person where getting instant feedback where, my air officer yelled at me because it was just a verbal call too. Like everything was probably safe, probably, right? But because the exact verbiage wasn't used correctly, he aborted it after I gave a clearance on a live control and yelled at me immediately, like, abort, abort, abort. What the fuck are you doing? And then for probably, I mean, fuck, dude, that was in 2012 that happened, and I'm still talking about it for months. For months, at least a year after that, I that control over and over in my head, like, what the fuck was I thinking? You have to be like that.
Yeah, those are good teaching points. I mean, you need those teaching points, and you got to have some humility and be like, yeah, I screwed up. How do I fix it? Just the guy who walks away and is like, well, whatever, that guy's an asshole. I didn't screw up. Like, well, sorry, you're not going to last. Like, you're not going to make it. You have that attitude, you're not staying.
Yeah, there's not a lot of leeway there. So how was it for you after you got, you're done with TCP school and everything like that, and you got your orders to 1st ANGLICO? Were you super pumped?
I was stoked. Yeah, absolutely stoked. Can I take a quick
let's take a break. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be back. 2 minutes.
Cool. All right, so 1st ANGLICO, that's where we're at now.
Yeah.
You want to tell us, first, you want to did you want to go to 1st ANGLICO, or were you just like ANGLICO in general?
I think 1st ANGLICO was my first choice. I just listed the ANGLICOs. I was like 1st, 2nd, 5th. And then there's like another option thing. I just wrote 1st again. I was like, I'm not taking anything other than ANGLICO.
When you got there, or when you got your orders, was there a deployment coming up that you already knew about? Like, were you rolling into a deployment, or did you get there and it was like, oh, we're training for a little bit?
No. So for the first time after being there, in the Marine Corps for like 7 years at this point, I show up and I'm like, hey, we got deployments? And they're like, yeah, we got deployments. I'm like, good. I want to be on one.
Let's get this done.
Yeah. I was like, finally, I'm showing up to a unit where not everybody's deployed already, and there's none coming up. And I had to fight for the deployment I did get on.
Yeah.
So I got attached to Salt Charlie. Mm-hmm. And they're like, you're going to be the chief for Salt Charlie. You can also be a firepower control team leader, depending on the deployment we do. And I think the Chuck deployment was scheduled as almost like they were almost going to deploy the whole Salt as FIC teams as like general support out of, I think, Leatherneck. And so they were going to go like, oh, hey, you can go support this National Guard team, unit, or you can go support the SEAL team, or you can go you can go do an ODA mission. We're just going to be like general support for different stuff. That's what it sounded like. And I was the only only enlisted JTAC. And the CO at the time said, I'm not sending a single firepower control team to Afghanistan with a staff sergeant in charge.
Why? That's kind of weird.
Because he didn't trust people, I guess. I don't know. He was like, only captains like can do
Oh
that.
God, dude.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Like,
There's
I
nothing
know,
more insulting than that.
like I know what I'm doing, dude. Like, I graduated from TACP school, second in my class. I think an F-18 pilot beat me out. Um, I was like 0.2% behind him, and I've taught at the schoolhouse. Like, I've been in the FSCC. I know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, so they're like, oh, we're gonna take you off that deployment, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not deploying again. And so Delta had the Georgian mission, and they were still manning up. They still had 8 months or something before they were going to deploy, and maybe 6. And so I talked to the chief, the staff sergeant at Delta, and I'm like, hey man, how many deployments have you done? And he's like, yeah, this is gonna be like number 5. And I'm like, I'm gonna take your deployment. How do you feel about staying home? And he's like, yeah. And so I went to my OIC and his OIC, and I said, look, I'm a staff sergeant. I've been in the Marine Corps for like 7 years. I don't have a single deployment to combat to Iraq or Afghanistan. This is going to be his 5th. Switch us. And they went to the CO with it, and they did it right away. They're like, yeah, let's give that guy a break. You go on deployment. Everybody's like, you sure you want to do that? It's the Georgian deployment. Like, you're going to be with the Georgians.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't care who it's with. Like, it could be with the soldiers from Timbuktu. Like, I don't care.
I'm just trying to get one in, man.
It could be the Tennessee National Guard. I've heard funny things about those guys, so I don't care. Like, send me. I get me in the fight. I want to do something. And so they switched us. It was great.
That's awesome.
And I had a great mentor that helped me out from 2nd Brigade named Gunny Titus. Do you know him? Titus Tuttle?
I know the name. I don't think we ever met.
Yeah. So he hooked me up with some information and helping me out and how to conduct and schedule training and pre-deployment training and all that stuff. Because I mean, as the assault chief, it's you and the OIC deciding how to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Which is
and
great.
He's like, you need to take a proactive approach with your officers and schedule training, because they'll just want to do TACP shoots.
Mm-hmm.
And you discover that you get the FIC team leaders, and you may have great officers, but mostly what they want to do is TACP shoots. And you've got 14 or 15 Marines who all need to go to the rifle range. They need to do corporal's course. They got to go to sergeant's course. They need to get NMCIs done. They've got to. I had gone to the TNR rewrite in Quantico a couple years before while I was at Fort Sill, so I knew very intimately how the training and readiness manual worked. Mm-hmm. And all the levels. So you have like 1,000 level events, which is individual events for MOS school, and so is 2,000 level, and then like 3,000 level is like squad level. Then you have a platoon level, then you have company level. So you have all these events like 1 through 7,000, and they have intervals. Like, you got to redo them every 6 months or every year.
Yeah.
And so I made like an Excel sheet, with all that, with all our Marines' names on it and when they last did it, and created that thing. And so I said, if you guys want to do training events, that's fine, but show me which TNR, event you're going to complete while you're there. So this isn't just for JTACs to go get their controls. We can do a lot of things on the OP for the 0621s and the 0861s so that they are current and qualified in their MOS. Like, it's not, you just don't go to MOS school. You redo this stuff every year.
Yeah.
So, if they wanted to do something, I was like, okay, well, we're going to add in these couple little things, and I'll act as an FSCC sometimes and or an FDC and do call for fire over the radio with the Marines on the Hill, so that while the JTAC is doing his control, we can coordinate indirect fire with it, and we can knock out some TNR events.
Yeah.
So that was really important, and Gunny Titus helped me, he pushed me in the right direction to organize that stuff.
Kind of round out the training so you're getting the most out, biggest bang for your buck out there.
Yeah, it's like, let's make every training event work for us in keeping everybody current. It's
definitely easy to kind of forget about the radio operators and like the JFOs, or thinking that they're getting their training by coming to the OP and setting up the radios for a TCP shoot and then chilling after that or whatever. But I think I don't know if it was like leftovers from you or whatever, but when I checked in with Salt Delta, and Flores was the comm chief, he's such a smart dude with radios, and him and Damaro and stuff would just research stuff or find the things that they need. It wasn't like one of those where, oh, I don't have this piece of gear, we can't do it. Like they would find it, or they would sometimes go to Fry's Electric and buy like connectors and shit so they can make different things happen. And I think the pressure of the job that we've already talked about, the seriousness of the job, plus the professionalism of a lot of the people you meet at Anglico and stuff like that, makes for a very good like environment for just learning the advanced skills of your job. Like we never sent Flores to Mountain Comm, but he could do HF shots. He could build a field expedient antenna, and that was on his own. He learned that on his own without having to go to a course or something like that. And I thought that was the great thing. Like I would have put some of my radio operators at Anglico up against, a lot of radio operators from other units I've been with. And in addition, the cross training was so good. Damaro was probably the top JFO on the team, in Salt Delta, and he was a radio operator. He just understood it, and he did like you did. He's practicing it, and in the practical application, and he deployed and used it and stuff like that. Like, that's the quality of individuals, and I think that's the kind of quality of individuals you get there, and it's the environment that breeds that kind of let's all learn and be better at our jobs and stuff.
My mentality was because so for Salt Delta, when I got talked to them, not only you're the team chief, but then I was also a firepower control team leader. And you got 4 guys, and I got 2 radio operators and 0861, and we're going to be out on a patrol base together. And if I get shot, I want you to not only be able to you're going to go through TCCC and live tissue so you can fix me, but then you're also going to be able to know how to talk on the radio, program your radio, and then call for fire to save my life.
Yeah, save the day,
you need to be able to, you got to do a medevac and call for fire, and I need you to get me on an aircraft and save me. And I want everybody in the team to be able to do that. So if you're the Lance Corporal 0621 and I'm patrolling with you, I know how to do it for you. I also need you to know how to do it for me. And that was the goal for me through all training. It's like, let's make I don't care what rank you are. I don't care what your MOS is. We all need to know how to do this stuff. And it's like, I may have the certificate that says I can say cleared hot, but everybody's learning how to do this.
Yeah, because when it's in the moment, nobody cares about the certificate. Like if it's legit, and and the thing we always told guys too, even if you're a JFO or even if you're not a qualified JFO, but you've gone through so much training, you ought to be. Pilots and command and control structures know when someone that knows what they're talking about gets on the radio. If you get on the radio and you're like, I am not a JTAC, and then you just start doing everything that a JTAC would do, like routing people and doing everything very professionally, they're going to be like, well, he's not a JTAC. We're going to have to do the control, but, we could probably trust him. If you get on the radio and you're like, oh, God, we're getting shot at. I'm scared, then they're going to be like, oh, shit, this is going to take a lot longer to make this happen because we got to make sure all the information we're getting is accurate and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're going to trust your coordinates, and they're going to trust your talk on you sound like you're doing, and that's important. And, so we spun up really well. We did a lot of good workups. I think when you came in and took over, it was we hadn't even come together as a full SALT yet. We had all been off on these like individual training missions. And like I said, I was getting guys rifle ranges and corporals courses and sergeant's course. And I had FIC team going out here. I had some guys at jump school. So we had guys all over the place. And then I think when you came in was maybe the first time the whole SALT really started getting together and working and started doing main SALT missions. Like, okay, can we proficiently act like a SALT?
Yeah. It was. I showed up and I showed up on a Friday and everybody had checked in to the MU on that Monday. So I showed up to Anglico, checked in on Friday, and then that following Monday, I checked out and then checked in the MU, and then I was part of the team, and then we started our MU workup and stuff like that, doing those SALT level training events, But before that, you did a whole deployment and stuff. What was like your workup for the Georgian mission? And for those that don't know, we talked about the Georgian mission. If you don't know, there's a Georgian military, the country of Georgia has their military over, they're one of the big allies that are in Afghanistan. They have their own battle space and stuff like that. And the Marine Corps was training foreign military advisors and sending ANGLICO teams as the fire support specialists with these foreign military advisors to support the Georgians and their missions and their battle space and stuff like that. How was the workup for you? I know it's not the same as a normal Georgian liaison team because you guys come on as an attachment basically.
Yeah.
You want to explain that though?
Yeah. So, I benefited from having a really good team. Mm-hmm. I had very proficient officers. I had a great OIC and Captain Bates. I had a great air officer in Captain Chrisman, Squirrel.
Yeah, Squirrel.
They knew what they were doing. And we got some new, I think we switched out some FIC team leads. When I first got there, they were kind of coming and going. And it was really the first time I worked closely with a lot of officers. Up until then, it's like, well, the battery has a captain, and then there's 250 guys underneath him. Here, I've got 4 captains.
Yeah.
And out of 19 guys, 4 of them are captains. So we're not lacking in leadership. So what I saw was like, okay, how do I focus this? And I kind of went into that with like, let's make a mission for every training event. Like, what are we actually accomplishing? Mm-hmm. And are we tracking that? So we did, I remember as soon as I took over from the other staff sergeant, I had 3 sergeants come to me. And only one of them went on the deployment with it. 2 of them ended up going to Chuck, I think. But I had 3 sergeants come to me. They all had combat deployments. They had all been to Afghanistan. And they said, and they were frustrated. And they said, nobody asks us what we think about training events. And I said, okay, well, what do you think about training events? And like, we want to plan one. Like we've done these missions. We've been I think 1 or 2 of them had been on a Georgian mission before. And we're like, we think it should be done like this. Like, we want to do a real world style training event. We want to go in the backyard and have role players and have people, we want to have the Marines patrol through a town and just sort of live in an area. And I said, that sounds awesome. Like, and they're like, yeah, we want to design it. And I was like, absolutely. I will help you design it. And what a lot of people don't understand about scheduling training is all the, like, almost feels like BS paperwork you have to do. There is so much paperwork.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to do scheduling the ranges, just getting MREs, requesting stuff from comm, getting trucks, all the little S-shop games that you have to play to get things. I was like, this is a perfect learning opportunity for them on how to be a staff NCO. Mm-hmm. So I took them out. I was like, you guys design the training event, and you are going to submit all the requests. You're going to make sure that there's a range OIC, there's a range safety officer. You're going to find the range you want to use. You're going to scout the range. You're going to find out what area of Camp Pendleton you want to use. You're going to get the MREs. You're going to get the comm gear. You're going to get the batteries. You are going to schedule everything, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you exactly where you need to go and what you need to do to get that done. Mm-hmm. So I just walked them through it, and they scheduled a good training event. We went up to an area Camp Pendleton that had some like rundown buildings, and had those sergeants, they like dressed up and like, they had like, the goofy little Afghan hats and robes and stuff. And they would walk around and act like villagers, and we'd walk the Marines through, and we did like a 3-day training event, and the CO came out and watched it for, like a half a day. I drove him out there so he could check out what we're doing. I was like, yeah, these sergeants, they've deployed, they've been to Afghanistan. These guys created this training, and this is what they want to do. And I think that was really good in giving those, sergeants, there's a stupid word right now, empowerment, you're empowering people to do things. Like, it's the fancy word right now, you're empowering people to do things. But it gave them some ownership, in the training, and it made them feel like, hey, my experience in Afghanistan works, and this is part of that humility that comes in, is that I outrank them. I'm a JTAC. I've taught at the schoolhouse. I have a lot of knowledge in my head, but these guys have real world experience. Yeah. So rely on that. Don't act like I didn't act like I knew. I was like, okay, guys, I haven't deployed. I haven't been to Afghanistan. You have. You tell me what we need to do.
For sure.
So so that worked great in those training events. And what I did from then on is like, I knew all the things. We had to do the TACP shoots. We went to TCCC, Tactical Combat Casualty Care. We did the live tissue training with the pigs. We did a bunch of TACP shoots and backyards and stuff right there, OP Alpha. And but in each one of those, I tried to incorporate something from, that experience and from the training and readiness manual. It's like, we need all of this. We need to do our, our training objectives, but then we also need to make sure we're hitting our TR in our events, and then also inject stuff from the experience of these guys on this team who have actually deployed and been there, and get their feedback. Like, does this training help with our deployment? Is this going to be good for our deployment?
For sure.
And so, yeah, anyway, that's, some of the training that we did. And we went to Georgia, Captain Chrisman and I went to Georgia for a few days to meet the GLT. And I ran into Nate there. It was pretty funny. He was
working out there.
I don't know what he was doing there. What was he doing there?
He was, I think he was part of the cadre, like running people through training.
Yeah. So I ran into him briefly there. But anyway, we met them and just, got introduced. And then shortly after that, we went to Germany and did our workup with the company. So we each got detached to our individual companies, Georgian companies, and then lived on a little patrol base in Germany for a couple of weeks and ran through operations. While they would patrol, we would support their patrols, and did little inserted TACP shoots simulated in with that.
So this is the first time that you've integrated with the actual GLT, the actual Georgian Liaison Team guys. What was like the reception, for you guys?
It was good. I mean, the reception was, as far as how, what we were doing, they wanted us there. I thought that they received us pretty well. I don't want to say too much bad stuff about many people, but their OIC at the time was not great. He was well liked by all the Marines. He was an example of one of those guys who gets along with everybody and people like, but not proficient. And so he was a major in charge of that GLT. And I just thought, this is a little bit scary. It's a good thing that we know what we're doing. But I felt sorry for the Georgians. I was like, this guy does not communicate well.
Oh, really?
And he is not, I think he was not training them well. They weren't ready. He sort of said, hey, we're, training wheels are off and we're letting them go with it. And to me, as having been an instructor and been through a few schools, I looked at what they were doing. I was like, oh no, this is not taking the training wheels off and letting them do. We don't know what we're doing, so we're going to just let them do what they want to do.
See what happens.
Yeah, that's where we came up with, we'll see what happens. So we had watched that movie MacGruber. Have you seen that?
Oh, I actually haven't.
Oh, you got to watch it, dude. It's hilarious. But Captain Bates brings this movie up, MacGruber. We watched MacGruber, and there's a scene. I haven't watched it in years. I don't remember the exact. So what happens is, like, MacGruber, and it's a play on MacGyver.
Yeah.
And he's like this ex-SEAL with like 25 medals of honor, and they're like they're like charging this. They're behind a barrier or something where these guys are like shooting at him. And he's like, you're just out here winging it? You didn't even have a plan? And he's like, no, we're seeing what happens. There's a big difference between winging it and seeing what happens. So that sort of, we'll see what happens, became our mantra.
That's funny. I didn't even know that. I just said that randomly.
Yeah. No, that's I got it on our patch. We made a patch.
Oh, really?
And that says, we'll see what happens. And,
so once all this is done and stuff, and you're getting ready to actually deploy, let's talk about where you guys went in Afghanistan and kind of how your training translated to reality. Were you actually out supporting, individual companies, and how did you support those guys?
Yep. So there's 2 Georgian battalions in Helmand Province. We show up to Leatherneck. We're there for a few days, do all the BZO shoots and all that stuff, get our gear. And then we convoyed up to our patrol bases. And before that convoy, I got all the Marines together, and it's like we knew we weren't really going to see a whole lot of each other because we were going to three different bases. And one of the companies in the battalion support was going to Shergazi. I was going to PB Redvi, and then Andrew's team, Captain Lease, they went down to Faisal. And so these little patrol bases all along Route Red, and the basic mission of our battalion was to control Route Red, because it was a route where a lot of convoys are going up and down. It was like, keep this route safe so we can drive it. And I think that was basically the battalion's mission. So we were there to support them with air support, medevac, all that kind of stuff, comm.
Yeah.
And so we convoyed up. We dropped, FICT 8 down at Faisal, and then I stop with my team at Redvi, and then the rest of the Marines keep going. They all go to Shergazi up farther north. So I was supporting a infantry company, Alpha Company, 32nd Georgian Battalion at PB Redvi, and we had a 3-man EOD team, Marine Corps EOD team, with us, and then there was actually a Marine HIMARS platoon there. I think it was a platoon. But those guys just like bunkered in their side of the PB, and we never saw them. I went over and introduced myself once to them and said hi to the lieutenant in charge, and I think they had a gunny, and then they just like closed off their little side of the patrol base and never talked to us.
Oh, really? And for those that don't know, the HIMARS is the 227 millimeter rocket. Were they shooting a lot from there?
Yeah, they shot a decent amount, but they couldn't shoot an RAO, right? So they support a different AO, and then another HIMARS platoon supports our AO.
Yeah.
So these guys weren't doing anything for us.
Okay.
We're too close. So, yeah. So anyway, we check in. There was a second ANGLICO FIC team there, and that was pretty funny. Those guys were.
I've heard guys, I think, on that deployment talk about they're like, the turnover wasn't great and the gear wasn't great that we turned over.
Let's say standards were relaxed a little bit. That FIC team leader was a captain, but I didn't know until the next morning. We showed up like in the middle of the night. It's dark. And this dude with like unbloused pants comes out with a t-shirt on, and he's like, "What's up, bro?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm Staff Sergeant Real. I'm the team lead." And he's like, "Yeah, we got our tent ready for you." And they had moved into like another tent. So we had like a little tiny mini compound within the base, within the patrol base. And it was just our tent and EOD's tent, and then like a spare tent. And then we had like a little gym area. I think I sent you some of those pictures.
Yeah.
So like the next morning we get up, and he had like his frog gear on and had his little captain, insignia on. But I'm looking at the other Marines. One of them was one of my former students, MOS school. And, but they're like no shaves. Nobody had gotten a haircut in like 2 months. There was just open food trays everywhere. And just wearing like University of Alabama sweatshirts. And I was like, okay, all right, good to go. Didn't say anything. Like, you run your team how you want to run your team.
As long as they're effective, right?
Yeah. But they didn't do, like, that company did no patrolling. So who we were taking over for was like a company minus. And that Georgian company we took over for basically had gone internal and said, we're not doing any patrols. And they hadn't patrolled for a while.
Was the area pretty dangerous around that,
Yeah. We'd gotten some, we knew our patrol base got mortared a lot. We'd gotten some briefs, and there was a lot of IEDs. We ran into a lot of IEDs. We blew up a lot of trucks while we were there. I think we had 10 or 12 blown up MRAPs inside our patrol base.
Jeez, man, that's a lot.
At one point, the EOD guy told me that was the most heavily, our little area right outside patrol base of Redvi, because they blow up 100 yards outside the patrol base.
Yeah.
He said that was he was talking to whoever, and said that was the most heavily IED'd area in all of Afghanistan at that time. It was just, the Georgians they were just magnets for IEDs.
Well, when you're not out doing presence patrols and security patrols and stuff like that, that's what happens.
Yeah.
The Taliban dudes creep in, and They're ninjas too, man. They'll put in IEDs like all over the place, and they'll backlay too. Once you clear a route, they'll come in right behind you and put in one behind you.
Yeah, yeah, they're good, and that's why. So eventually, they sent us a second EOD team. So we had 2 3-man Marine EOD teams there with 2 trucks, because they were just getting so much work. It was like every other day they're going out on a call, because somebody sees something, or we see somebody emplacing something, or because a truck blew up and they got to do a post-op, post-blast. So yeah, there's a lot of that. But anyway, we did, RIP TOA. We did our left seat, right seat, and I did left seat or right seat for a couple of days, and then took over. And October 5th was the first day we officially took. So it was October 5th, 2012. No, yeah, right, yeah, 2012. We took over the AO, so it was officially passed to our company and me as the 15 lead. And we had a patrol going out that day, and that mixed patrol was a Georgian patrol, and it had, I think, all 3 of my guys on it. So Senesac, Finch, and Sanchez, and then there's a couple guys from the 2nd ANGLICO team, like a corporal and their sergeant or something. The radio. So we had a 086 one and a radio operator with them, and they sort of went out in like this weird parallel patrol where they had like one squad next to the other and sort of patrolling out into this AO to our northeast. Mm-hmm. And they started taking fire, and it was almost like a horseshoe. Like they started taking fire from like 3 different directions. And so they're taking cover, and I get the call. So me and the captain are sitting in the COC. We had a pretty nice setup in our COC. I mean, I had a couple of big screen TVs, and I don't think we had our PGSS yet, but we had cameras on a tower, and I had my video scout. And I had all my radios right in front of me. So it was like I could see a lot of stuff. I had a lot of situational awareness inside that COC. I had my GRG up on a big plywood board next to me. And I had my little tablet. We took our little tablets that we bought at Walmart and loaded our GRGs onto them like the pilots do.
Oh, okay.
So we could just scroll through it. And
this was like the very beginning of that too. Were you guys on Apple still at the time, or had they started using the Samsung?
We just went to Walmart and bought a Samsung tablet. And some dude at China Lake sent us the app and the map software.
That major that was out there.
Yeah. And Squirrel hooked that up. And that was invaluable.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
that thing was cherry to have.
It was game changer, dude. I got one. So when I went out for my 2013 workup in 29 Palms for my advisor team, the last exercise, they're like, hey, any JTACs or whatever from the advisor teams or the battalion's training, come to this building on this day at this time. We're going to do a brief on this new kind of mapping system or whatever. And it was the PFIV. It was like the first. It was before Kill Switch. And he's like, look, I'm going to give all you guys this program. I'm going to show you how to access it. It's not a real Marine Corps program yet. We're still trying to figure it out. You guys are all going to Afghanistan. Use it. Let us know what you think. Give us feedback. And don't let anybody else see it, kind of deal. Like keep it on the DL because we don't want everyone knowing that we have it and stuff. Yeah. Now everybody uses that kind of stuff, that technology now. But what a game changer, right? Being able to just, for those that don't know what a GRG is, it's called a grid reference. Graphic. What is it?
Grid reference graphic. Yeah.
So basically, it's a blown up map. Think of a black and white Google Earth, and every building is numbered and it's all sectored out. So you could say, sector whatever, building number whatever, and the aircraft knows exactly who you're talking about or whatever. Well, on the tablet, you can put that information in. It snaps right to a grid and gives you all this information. And it's a total game changer. And it was, I'm sure you guys loved having it, I carried mine in an OtterBox in my cargo pocket. That's how I carried mine around, my Samsung Tab 2, I think.
Yeah, that's what I had, Samsung Tab 2. And I had a little pouch right on my, it was like right on my chest. It was underneath my mag pouches. I had like a little slip, and I could just pull that thing out, look at it, and then slide it back in.
Yeah.
And that thing was awesome. and that I think developed because pilots used to carry paper maps in the, in their cockpit, and they would try to find stuff, and then eventually they started scanning them and putting them on iPads,
Yep.
and then started using their iPads, and they're like, well, hey, let's give these to the, this program came out of, let's have the ground guys do the same thing, and then we could just be looking at the same thing.
And I think Captain Chrisman Squirrel was like one of the lead guys in the pilots doing the iPad scanning of the first iteration of it when it was on that. And then I think the story goes that Apple was not excited about helping the Department of Defense kill people more efficiently. So it switched to an Android-based product.
Yeah. That was good. I think we were the first team maybe to use that in combat.
It's a great tool.
Possibly. I think we were one of the early ones. Anyway.
So what was your like standard enemy composition that you were seeing? If you're outside of IED attacks, which everybody's getting attacked by IEDs. If you were getting small arms fire and stuff like that, like what was squad level? Fire.
It was pretty small. Well, that first day it was multiple people. Obviously, they knew what they were doing, so they have that little horseshoe around us. So they've got, at least probably 8, 10 guys maybe. But I got PID on 2 of them behind a berm, and they were like straight east of where our patrol was, and I got PID on them through our camera system. And I think I had Harriers on station. Yeah, I did. And one of them had just left to go refuel. So I had one Harrier with me, and he was just providing, ISR. He was just watching out, for the patrol. We started taking fire. So I immediately passed him a 9-line. I just had a point, established him point echo overhead, and then passed him a 9-line, had him holding it like Alpha Bravo 8. And I chose to do a gun run instead of actually dropping munitions because of the ROEs we'd been given. We had pretty strict ROEs.
Yeah.
And they were like, if they're even next to a wall, I mean, the compounds over there, it's like, instead of like a fence in a yard, they have walls.
There's these mud walls surrounding their mud hut.
Yeah. So they're like, even if he's next to a wall, you can't drop on him without regimental approval. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
These guys were behind a berm, and I was like, well, it sort of maybe, could be interpreted as a wall if you wanted to. So I was like, instead of asking, I'm just going to do a gun run. Like, it'll be pretty cool. It'll make some noise. It'll put the aircraft right on top of them, which will, I think be pretty effective. So I just chose to do a gun run instead of trying to wait for permission for, a GBU or something. So that single aircraft came in, he did that gun run, and it was pretty cool watching on the screen, because you're looking at a screen that's basically at double eye level. We had that little tower that had cameras on it, and it's maybe 20 or 30 feet in the air, and it's pretty flat there in that part of Afghanistan. And you're just looking almost like over the heads of our patrol out at these guys, zoomed way in on these guys that are popping up over this berm and shooting AKs at our patrol. And the fire was pretty consistent. They had a good little fight. Sanchez went Winchester on his saw while he was out there. And because that second ANGLICO corporal was grabbing him by the back and moving him and putting it, he's like, shoot there. And they grab him, shoot there. He's like pointing him where to shoot. And he just grabbed him and started moving.
Solid NCO leadership right there.
Yeah, it was. Sanchez came back and he's like, yeah, I just picked up a round like that was shot at him. He like reached over and like one was right there.
Oh shit! Jeez.
Yeah. So he got it pretty good. But anyway, did the gun run on those guys, and all fire stopped. So every location stopped shooting at them. They jumped. Their typical reaction was jump on motorcycles and drive east. So that's what they did. Multiple groups jumped on motorcycles and they were gone. And it was in an area that, again, they hadn't patrolled in a long time, so we didn't have a lot of good presence or security there. And we never got to go do a real BDA on the ground. They launched QRF and brought everybody back. And I could see on the camera, though, like, it was weird. Like, a bunch of the locals ran out and they were like picking up all the brass. And the dude who we hit, I think, was thrown on the back of a motorcycle and they drove him out of there. and
Surprised
then
they
it
didn't
was
throw him in a wheelbarrow. That was like the standard, the Taliban ambulance is what we called it. Come out with a
yeah,
wheelbarrow.
yeah. Um,
Well,
so it was,
how did it feel though? Like you're a JTAC, this is your first deployment now.
yeah,
It's one of your first days in country, and
yeah,
now you're getting in control. Like you're doing it for real. It's no
yeah,
longer practice. It's no longer watching from the bench. Like you're in the
yeah.
game and you're actively participating. What was like the adrenaline like? What was the feeling after during and after that control?
I went and had a couple cigarettes. Um,
Were you
you know,
shaky?
yeah, a little bit. I was, you're nervous. Like I've got to do this right.
Yeah.
Um,
Everyone's fucking counting on me. Yeah.
yeah, and um, but I knew what I was doing, and I just wrote out my 9 line. I passed it. Squirrel's voice came across with approval for the mission, um, and cleared him hot. He did the run, and yeah, it was a little jittery. I was like, okay, that just happened. First actual combat drop, um, and but what was really good about it is the reaction from the Georgians,
Mm-hmm.
because you're there to support their mission, right? They have a mission to secure that AO, and you are there to support them. And when that gun run came, and we're looking at that video screen, and what happens on the video screen, those 20 millimeter rounds hit the ground. They shot dirt up in the air, like, I don't know, like 100 feet in the air. And these are incendiary rounds. And it just created this wall of dirt shooting up like 200 yards. All gunfire stops. The CO, the company CO, is sitting at a table, 15 feet away from me, and they just jump up and they're like, yes, awesome. And getting that appreciation from them, and knowing that, hey, no one got shot, we didn't take any casualties. I mean, they took a lot of fire,
Yeah.
and that like sobered it out and made me feel good. It's like, okay,
Cool.
you've practiced it all. You've gone to the schools. You think you know what you're doing. Now you know that you know what you're doing.
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was a confidence boost for not only you,
Yeah,
getting one out, and getting it done, but like you said, the people around you. Okay, he's legit. Like he knows what he's doing. Like we
yeah,
can trust him now.
yeah. Like he's here to support us, and they're doing their mission.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that felt good. And one of the biggest things with Sanchez, he's a great dude, Lance
Oh yeah.
Corporal Sanchez. That guy, I think I listened to a podcast you were talking about. He's got that Southern accent, so he's like a Mexican dude. He's
Yeah.
got this Southern drawl.
Real bad. I thought he was fucking around with me for like 2 days. When I first met him, like it was after like 2 days. I'm like, do you actually talk like that? And yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Like, all right, cool.
funny dude, man. And
Funny.
he was real quiet, and he's got sort of this like demeanor about him that people think he's like timid, and maybe he is a little bit. But and he was one of those guys, like, people sort of like, oh, I don't know if he's gonna do okay. And I was like, I just knew. I was like, he's gonna be fine. He's got a saw. His first contact, the first time he gets to shoot that thing, he's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And he came back, and he was the most excited I've ever seen him. Like, he was just like, I want Winchester, Staff Sergeant, and I was like, good to go, Sanchez.
Fuck
Like,
yeah,
why
man.
don't you go get accountability for all your gear? Let me know serialized gear is up. You guys did awesome. We'll debrief. And yeah, I was really excited for him. He needed that,
That's good.
and he needed that confidence boost. And then he patrolled every day for 7 months. He just, that dude and the rest of my team just threw on the weight, and every day they were out.
And that's kind of I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad you told a little piece of his story and stuff like that, because that's the kind of stuff that people don't know about these regular dudes. The regular Lance Corporal that's out there on the foot patrol doing stuff. He's not getting accolades. He's not getting a Bronze Star. He's not getting whatever. He's just out there doing his job. Comes back, gets out of the Marine Corps, goes home, and people see him as that dude that went to the Marine Corps for a little bit. Now he's back.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, how many people would know that about him, that he did something like that, or that unless you talk about it, and you talk about it on the podcast and stuff like that. Those are the kind of stories that I like hearing, because it's like these dudes do so many cool things, and they've done, going on patrol for 7 months. Unless you've done something like that, you can imagine a foot patrol in Afghanistan in an area full of IEDs, in an area where you're getting attacked,
Yeah.
that's no small thing. And it's a shame that more people's stories aren't out there. And I hope people are telling their stories to their families and stuff like that and recording it, because someone has to know, down the line that, hey, Grandpa was in the war and this is what he did. How crazy is that? And he's successful.
Yeah.
I want to use this piece of the story as the preview for another podcast episode, because we are at around 2 hours. And
Okay.
I would like to set up another episode and go into detail. We can talk more about the combat stuff and stuff like that. And if you want, maybe I'll see if Damaro wants to get on, and you guys can kind of bounce stories off each other. Maybe we'll do a little 3-way podcast. I haven't done that in a long time with two people, but I don't want the story to get missed, so I want to cut it here so that people don't miss out on it. But I appreciate you coming on and talking about, it's tough, man. It's tough that you go that long without getting a deployment in, and then you finally get to do it, and that's awesome. And we talked about earlier, it's tough for some guys that never got that opportunity. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a few stories to tell. Frustrations with drops and IED and placers. I'm pretty sure Prince Harry flew for me one day, so we can talk about that if you want.
For sure.
Like 97% sure. But yeah, bring tomorrow on. We can talk about some medevacs we ran and stuff.
Yeah.
That was a great team. We had good people that benefited from good officers and good NCOs, and I just give all those guys all the props in the world for doing a great mission. That time we could talk about we just do one podcast on that deployment.
Yeah, for sure. When I got there and I took over the team, that's all people talked about was like the Georgia deployment and the different things, and like CSON and guys getting on the saws, and how much they enjoyed how they came into their own as saw gunners and stuff like that. And then it was good for me seeing that and knowing that about them, guys talking about it, because once we got back from our MEU and we were teaching the new guys, now these guys like Sanchez and CSON and stuff are stepping up and teaching these guys how to be good saw gunners and stuff, and using that real world experience that they gained, to pass on that information. So, which is all you can ask for,
Yeah.
So, anyways, thanks again for coming on the podcast, man. I know you don't really want to share any of your social media or anything like that, or you're not really on social media that much, are you?
I don't do any social media. I've got like a odd, I don't know. I've got a YouTube channel where I was just doing stuff where I recorded myself like fixing things.
Oh.
There is maybe I'll send you the link for it. When I got back from that deployment, Andrew's talked about it, but we lost a staff sergeant, and I went and did I got invited to do a speech at the city of Burbank Memorial Day ceremony in 2013.
Okay.
And I've got that on my YouTube, and I can send that to you. And it's just a way to sort of honor him, and we got Memorial Day coming up soon. So I hadn't seen that in years. I just found it like a week or two ago. I saw it on YouTube.
Yeah, man, send it to me and I'll put it in the show notes. That way people can check it out.
Cool.
Well, thanks for everyone for checking out the podcast. As always, you can hit up my Instagram at Former Action Guys is one, at J Kramer Graphics is the other. Hit my website up, buy something, jkramergraphics.com. I could really appreciate that. I'm like I said in the intro, I'm finishing up school. I'm 2 weeks away from graduation, and I got to get a real job, and I think this might be my real job. So if you want to support the podcast and stuff, go to the website, pick up a sticker or T-shirt, help out a dude. And outside of that, I'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, dude. All right.